All right, so I've been working on my speech voice. I'm really trying to get. I want to be taken seriously on the microphone, so I'm gonna do a very famous speech. I want you guys to give me feedback on how this sounds. You ready? We knew the world would not be the same. A few people laughed, a few people cried, a few people were silent. I remember the line from the Hindu scripture, the Bhagavad Gita. Vishnu is trying to persuade the prince that he should do his duty and impress him, and to impress him takes on the multi-armed form and says, "Now I am become death, the destroyer of worlds." I suppose we all thought that one way or another.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Very nice.
In light of that, let's get the episode started.
Excellent.
Thanks.
A brilliant cold open.
Really
Excellent work. Though.
Yes.
Very good. Sounds good.
All right,
You should
this
be a
is
voice actor.
Thank you.
Oppenheimer
Very
is
good.
rolling over, and it's great.
I'm so happy with that performance.
this is Big Billy, and I don't believe these
Great
Stella
job.
Artois ciders have any alcohol in them.
They probably don't.
Yeah, you've been tricked.
I've had a few.
This is Chris, and trigger warnings for the whole episode, spoilers for the whole episode. You're going to get offended today, kids.
I'm Matt, and I will probably be the perpetrator of most of these. Thank you. This is Kyle. I'm back from the West Coast and ready to rock and roll.
I'm Jake, and this is episode 31.
Whoa.
We have entered a new era
Oh, my.
of TGNA.
And I think at some point we're going to have Lisa and Frank drop in.
They'll be popping in.
Yeah. But to get started...
We might top out at 7 participants this afternoon.
Good
ladies and gents.
gravy. So to get started... Oh, Jesus. Oh, whew. If it doesn't have alcohol in these Stella Artois, it definitely has carbonation. I'll tell you that much.
Burp.
Yeah. I have finally bought some new video games, believe it or not. I bought a game 90% off, and that game is Dino D-Day. What the fuck is Dino D-Day?
Dino D-Day.
You may ask. Well, it is a game built off the Counter-Strike engine.
Oh.
Played in a Counter-Strike style, 2 teams going against each other to shoot each other with different game modes. Deathmatch, which is you regenerate, shoot each other to get points to a point limit. There's King of the Hill, where you try to occupy a space for your team. You win by occupying that space for a certain amount of time, controlling it. And then regular, kill the other team. And the first team that dies loses. But it's set in World War II, and there are dinosaurs on both
Historically
sides.
accurate. Historically accurate.
Yeah, so it's fucking fantastic because you could be a big dumb dinosaur with like a Vulcan cannon on its back. It just,
Wow.
you could be a little dinosaur that like shoots, like claws people. You can be one that flies around and spits on them, and then you can be regular guys with Tommy guns. It is. There's only like 2 servers that are really active. I think the game full price is $10. I enjoyed it so much that I bought another copy at full price for Genevieve to play. It's still developing, but you can find a full server or 2 and get a good experience. One thing that I really, really enjoyed is the gunplay. It feels a lot more, I want to say satisfying. Realistic's not exactly the right word, but the behavior seems more appropriate to each weapon. Like your sniper rifle, it's like this big boom, and like when you hit something, it's fucking like shook, right? It's like, oh shit, like almost all its health is gone, even if it's a big dinosaur monster. But your guy doesn't take 30 seconds to reload because real shooters don't do that. It's like, so the machine gun, if you unload it, isn't super accurate, but it doesn't go all over the place. And it's great because it's like the only weapon that you can counter the really small raptors with because they're so fast and they can jump so high. You're just like, fuck it. You got to spray all over the room. It is incredibly exciting. My favorite part about the game, though, is the shitty sound work. Like, they have music. Like, when you win, it starts playing music that you would imagine a victory from, like, the 1940s. but you can still play after time runs out. When you die, it's this incredibly loud, super sad music of the same era. So like there's no transition. It's just suddenly jarring, like it is just the right amount of shitty. It's totally worth $10 fucking. I think I've put 4 hours into it so far, and I love it. I love it.
Can you be like a velociraptor storming the beaches of Normandy?
So there's not like there's no map that is the beaches of Normandy. They're like towns and stuff. But yeah, you can be a velociraptor and you can sprint and you run really, really fast, and you can jump up in the air, and if you right click, you like rocket at the other player and just bite their head off.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice.
It sounds like kind of what Turok always should have been.
Right?
I never
kind of, but anyway.
I've never played any Turok. What's that like?
Go back to the N64 for it.
They were fun enough in the days of split screen, screen looking multiplayer with not dinosaurs but rather lizard people for the most part.
Oh.
But the weapons were pretty creative.
I played it a lot at summer camp. It was the only M-rated game that was there outside of South Park, Chef's Love Shack. Wow. Which is a Mario Party themed South Park game, which is incredible. You can get your hands on it. I highly recommend it. But yeah, Turok was a really shitty little game franchise. Yeah. And the only reason I would suggest playing it is because it holds like a nostalgic piece of my childhood.
I really only played 2 and a bit of 3 on the N64. And then I had the PS2 game. I don't know if there was more than one, but I had one of them. It was bad. It was bad.
Yeah, so this game, Dino D-Day, they even have they write lore in there. They write like letters home to men are writing letters home to their wives. We stormed the beaches and we encountered the Raptor Brigade, and fighting was fierce and the men never gave in, but we had to retreat. It's just like they are. It's one of those things that perfectly nails campiness, right? It's like just the right amount of knowing it head up its own ass, but it's just. I love it so much. But when I first saw it, I wouldn't have gotten it if it wasn't $1. Because who thinks that you can incorporate dinosaurs into a fucking first-person shooter and have it be any good?
Right.
Turns out it really is. Like, they
I don't think it's from the sound of it. They probably couldn't have pulled it off if they didn't go campy on purpose.
Yeah, I don't. If it was tried to be a little too serious, it sort of has that like Team Fortress feel to me. Team Fortress is a great game, but it's pretty ridiculous. I mean, if we're going to be honest, even look at Fortnite, the way that you can construct that new game, where you can construct stairs in the middle of nowhere and climb up into the sky,
as it's being constructed.
Yeah, it doesn't make any fucking sense.
It's silly, but
it doesn't take itself too seriously, and that lends itself to really good gameplay, and that's what this game does. But it is. I got to look into who developed it. If it's a small team, I am amazed because the balance of these dinosaur characters, the flying spitting raptor can fly, but it's got low HP or whatever, right? You can hardly hit it, but if you do hit it, it's fucked. You have a big monster dinosaur, like one of those ones that's low to the ground with a cannon on its back. So it shoots explosive rounds, but it's low profile, so it's hard to hit, but it's really slow. So you're like, oh, I'm gonna blast this thing, but then you realize it only stands a foot high, so all you can see is its gun. That works out great. And then there's one that's just a big scary monster. I think it's like the Utah Raptor. But the nice thing about it is it's fucking huge, so you can just blast it from across the map. It takes 3 sniper shots or whatever to kill, but it's big and easy to see. I don't know if it was a happy accident. I think I'm just going to attribute it to a really good team. It just feels good. And what else can you want from a game? It just feels good.
You failed to mention that there are tank / triceratops / Nazis.
all the
There are
Triceratops I
Nazi-
ever saw were
yeah.
dead.
Dinosaurs and Nazis.
I mean, no, Nazi dinosaurs. This
Oh
Nazi
yeah,
dino-
that's
This
the
is a-
lore. It's not
Yeah.
as though the dinosaurs are utilizing
If you notice
or
in this
being
picture,
utilized.
it's not, this Triceratops is clearly
So-
chosen to be a Nazi.
I'm looking at a picture of a Triceratops that is with the Third Reich.
Yeah, the dinosaurs are not being utilized by the Nazis. They are, in fact, Nazi
Nazis.
dinosaurs. Yeah.
They're
the-
reading
the
Mein Kampf
Triceratops
every
is-
night before they go to war.
As we know, the Triceratops is the master race for.
So, but I've seen Triceratops.
superior.
I've seen Triceratop models on the map, but I've never seen them like active or moving.
Okay.
I think there's a last stand mode, which is probably like a zombie thing. I never fucked with it because we've talked about it before. I don't play zombie mode. But the community's cool because they don't really have a tutorial. I didn't even know how to change my class. Oh, that's another thing I should have mentioned. Like the different dinosaurs are just classes. So instead of like Counter-Strike where you buy your loadout, so in Counter-Strike at the beginning of the round you have some amount of money you can buy by pushing a button, selecting from a menu the weapons you want to use for that round. The more kills you get, the more money you'll have next round, that kind of thing. In this one, you just select a class like Sniper or Medic or Dinosaur, and that's who you play as and who you respawn as. The Medic is actually super functional because it's got decent weapons, but their healing stuff is area of effect. So you just fucking throw it right at the ground, and everybody who stands in that area gets healed up.
Nice.
If you're a big, fat, slow dinosaur with a machine gun on your back, it's super useful because you're gonna get friggin' shot up, you know. Everything about it is so dumb and so fun. And if you have like even on the load screens, if you're reading about like these dinosaurs that decided to become Nazis, it's just. This is something I had no idea I needed in my life. It is so good. Of course, there's allied dinosaurs. Don't worry about that. I mean,
They're not as interesting.
but I think my other favorite part is they make no attempt to explain why the dinosaurs are there. No one mentions where they come from. Simply that they joined the Third Reich.
Of course.
Yeah.
Why wouldn't?
Yeah. It's I'll bring it sometime and we'll play it. I cannot recommend it highly enough for $10, especially if it ever goes on sale again. It was 90% off last time.
Wow.
I got it for 99 cents.
Holla.
Right? If you buy a game and you play it enough that you end up spending $1 an hour to play it, I think you've got your game's worth. I played $1 per the entire lifespan of the game.
Right,
you know what I
right.
mean? I play it every 3 days. It's fucking great. All right. If nobody has any questions about that, I guess we'll move on to the next game.
Well, no. Well, actually,
Go
one
ahead.
thing that intrigues me, and this is a theme, it seems like there are certain wars that have tons of games made about them, and there are others where there's nothing. World War II has got like a third or maybe even more of all games take place in World War II, yet I don't think there's ever been a game that I can think of that's been made in the Civil War, which is kind of odd, and then particularly World War I. World War I is like the forgotten about war. I can't think of a single game.
Battlefield 1 just came out thanks
Okay.
to EA, and it was actually quite good.
Interesting.
I enjoyed it when it launched, and the other one, there's a Sid Meier. For anyone who remembers those old RTS games,
Mhm.
he made a Civil War game that was phenomenal.
Wow.
Because you
Really?
can
What's it called?
Sid Meier's Civil War,
No way. I've never heard of this.
and it was a PC game in the '90s, and it's an RTS, and you can control specific
what's the acronym stand for? RTS?
real-time strategy.
Ah.
And it what's great about it is you control specific generals at specific battles in the Civil War. So you can control Stonewall Jackson and his troop movement. I mean, I liked it when I was like 8 or 9. I'm a big history buff. I thought it was a lot of fun. But no, you're absolutely right. World War II, I'd say, takes up way more than a third.
Yeah, way more. Yeah.
And it's the only war that they would do shit like Dino D-Day.
Mm-hmm.
No one's going to make a dinosaur war about Vietnam because like they're like, oh well, America committed atrocities there. We can't make fun of that. But we can make fun of the atrocities that like the Germans committed against, like the Russians and the Jews, and we'll make fun of D-Day and like the 60,000 Americans who died there.
Well,
Dinosaurs.
I think there was I could have sworn there was a Total War series. There's like, so if you're not familiar, the game that comes to mind is Rome Total War. So it's set in the Roman era. You command different cities as basically army generators, army farms, and then you move them throughout the map. And when you go to battle, you command groups of soldiers to simulate battles. Like you control their movement and tell them how to attack, and then it simulates the attack itself.
Essentially down to like the platoon. You move
Right.
10 to 15 to 20 men at a time. You can move them in larger groups. And
And you have to make the decision: do you want your army to have more cavalry? Do you want to have more infantrymen, more pikemen, more archers? You can do city defense. It's a great series.
Yes.
I could have sworn there was a Civil War one.
I can't remember, but the Sid Meier one was much less complicated than that. There was no building of your forces. It was, this is what the battle was. Here it is, and here's who you have.
So Sid Meier he's responsible for the Civilization games that we have talked about in depth. I think episode 6 was our big Civ 5 discussion.
It was 4, 5, or 6. One of them.
Yeah. But in one of those games, I think in 4, they had a scenario where you could play the Civil War, and I never touched it because that game, that was more about city management than like platoon management.
Exactly.
So what did you... go ahead, you had something to say.
But I think you're right about that, and I think this Sid Meier's Civil War predates even any of the Civilization games, and most RTSs, like even StarCraft. I think this game came out in like 90. I think I played it out of a fucking cereal box.
What was the gameplay like, is what I'm getting at.
It was, there was no function to drag a mouse over a large area and control multiple units at once. It was select, click a button that said attack here, attack there. You could click where on the map you wanted people to go to, and which enemy units to engage. But outside of the battle, there was no, like, not subplot, but there was no other gameplay other than choosing what battle, and you unlock the battles as you played them.
That's pretty cool. Do you guys... There was a game that... It's not Europa Universalis, because I think that's more like Empire Management. There was a game that came out, I think, like 3 years ago, where people were remarking how real to life the different units were, and it was big army management. You'd have Napoleonic armies fighting like Goth hordes. I can't remember the name of it. I run a video game podcast. I can't remember the name of this goddamn game. It was huge.
How long ago did it come out?
I think like 3 years ago.
Okay, yeah.
But wait, shit. How did we get to... the reason... we talked about this on the podcast before. The reason I think that so many games are made about World War II is World War I was really the first advent of automatic weapons in deployment. You know what I mean? Like where they really stayed... By my measure, and you may know better than me, but they were still using large armies and they were getting mowed down. World War II, they had a ton of really cool weapons. Right, and there's this.
And they learned from the lessons of World War One.
Right. Yeah.
But the weird thing about World War II, and even to some degree World War One, there's this. I found there's this weird opinion that the Germans were evil in World War One, when it was like, I'm pretty sure it was everybody being really imperialistic.
You know what?
Yeah.
A great resource to kind of, because I didn't know dick about World War I either. I don't know how many of you I've mentioned this to before, but on YouTube there's a channel called The Great War, and it is it's ran by this guy named Indy Nidell, and they're like little 10-minute history lessons, and it's a week's worth of history exactly 100 years after it happened. He started in 2014. It's going to end sometime this coming year, 2018. But it's like being able to watch a week's recap of all the developments of the war exactly 100 years after the fact, and leading up to it, I think it was three specials consecutively before the war actually started, where he breaks down exactly how like what political strings were being pulled that led up to what was ultimately dozens of small wars happening at the same time, and Germany happened to be one of the linchpins in it.
I think they just announced that they're going to do the same thing for World War II once World War One ends. So it should be pretty good. But there's this, and I'm not really casting judgment on it. There seems to be this separation, mental separation of humanity from the Germans in World War II because, Germany committed these horrible atrocities, but everybody's cool with like, well, let me just mow down a bunch of German soldiers. They're all fucking Nazi monsters. You know what I mean? It's not like they're all running around with like SS bolts on their shoulders. They're not all literally Hitler.
No, but they are all Nazis, and when they're shooting at you and your friends, it's and it is.
I think you're. I don't know if you're deliberately missing my point. What I'm saying is,
it's kind of like a gross oversimplification of real people.
So that's why there's so many games about it, because the weapons were so much fun, and nobody's ever like, do we want to make another game about killing these people? You were talking about Vietnam. People be like, are we really going to monetize this war that everybody has questions about?
Exactly.
Yeah.
There's no gray area on World War II. It's just like, oh, we did the right thing.
Yeah. You don't need to believe that every single Nazi was an evil piece of shit to have no qualm with mowing them down in a video game. Because ultimately, when the war's happening, if you're on the ground, it's you and them.
Yeah, I don't really have any qualms about playing through any video game, but I think it is strange that nobody's ever like, these were people. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
They're like,
well,
fuck them.
I think it's this weird combination where they are kind of viewed as like pure evil, but then it's also very politically correct in that they're, like Caucasian people. So if you were to portray them as pure evil, you're not going to run into any weird ground. Where like if you're playing Alexander the Great in some video game and you're fighting the Persians, it's pretty hard to like describe the Persians as pure evil. You know what I mean? Because it would just be really like racist and weird to have,
I mean, even today we have discussions about like ISIS and America's responsible for creating them and shit like that, and it like it's just a phenomenon I've seen that nobody ever has any qualms about any World War II game. And
I mean, like, look at exactly to your point, Kyle. Look at the movie 300.
Yeah, right.
Which sure was based on a real battle, but was like way significant creative liberties, right? Painting the British Greeks. Inevitably against the apparently also British Persians.
Yeah, right.
Who are all like deformed mutants with trillions of piercings, evidently.
Yeah.
They did not have a 1,000,000-man army. There's like this element of creative liberty. And, I don't recall hearing any outrage at that. Maybe it was close enough to 9/11 that people weren't ready to get all PC about it or what. But you look at World War II a gazillion years ago, and then there was a clear bad guy, right? Even if you exonerate a majority of the Nazi soldiers, the fact of the matter is, even if they were doing it in ignorance, they were fighting for what was an empire based on racism and world domination and subjugation. It's like legitimate fucking bad guy, right? And as long as these who were mostly civilians, not professional soldiers, are going to pick up arms and try to enforce that subjugation on behalf of their dear leader, then I have no problems, especially in a video game where it's, of course, fiction, hopping in and kicking their asses. Even if there was a bunch of evil shit going on with the Allies too, it wasn't as evil at the time.
Well,
we got to look at the time.
You touched right on it. It was just an empire based on racism and subjugation, and it's like if you take a step back and you look at it, and you're like, "There's." I don't know.
I don't think everyone who donned a Nazi, uniform believed that, right? Because there was a lot of populism in it too. If you look back at his old speeches, he was invoking God. He was invoking like how they got screwed in the Treaty of Versailles. He was invoking and he was peddling, or he was piggybacking off of the decades of suffering that his countrymen had gone through, and he sought out a scapegoat and motivated the people. It just turned out to be fucking evil.
Right.
Yeah, I think you got to a tipping point where, like, you couldn't go against the government, or you would.
Well, yeah.
You get sent to a camp too. It just, I think what I'm getting down to say, and I'm not trying to be an apologist for anybody. I think it's weird. Like, to me, all these wars were tragedies. You know what I mean? Like, it was a fucking tragedy that this happened.
Yeah.
It's horrible.
That people on both sides were forced to live and die in a way that nobody ever should. I mean, humanity as a group learned a greater lesson, I suppose, but it was a fucking tragedy. And it's weird to me to see an opinion like, well, this tragedy we won't touch, but this one, let's make 1 million video games about it. We'll have so much fun. It's just so bizarre.
I agree, but I mean, I think it's easy enough, and again, with like a historical lens, it's easy enough to see how those. I mean, like the game mechanics of World War II shooting games they just fall right into your lap as a developer.
Yeah,
like
they do.
Like, you know, World War I was harder, and I haven't played Battlefield 1 yet, but I've seen a decent bit of it. That's not how World War I operated for the most part.
Right.
No.
So
What's cool about that is that they brought back all these prototype weapons and made them so more people could have them for gameplay reasons. But you didn't have to do that with World War II. All these different sides of all this different equipment, and they realized that the trenches don't fucking work, so they're running into the cities. And like, okay, close quarters, you know, medium range, like all of a sudden, you know, all the wisdom and tactics of the generals of old that led to the disaster that was World War I, arguably a bigger disaster in terms of warfare. You know, you get to see how those lessons are learned and play out, having been learned in the real world chronicles of every theater of World War II. And that's why the games, I think they remain such a fertile soil to build games out of.
Right. I think that if you look at, like, you know, the 1800s or before, the pinnacle of like military, reaching the top meant you were a general. I feel like that was the most important person, because they were the ones looking at the map, deciding where to move pieces. That was where the real brilliance was. And starting in World War II, it was almost down to like every individual could make a brilliant move to, like, you know, fighting house to house to help keep his friends alive by, you know, the flanking enemy around the side of a house. And that was kind of the first time we had the triumph of the individual because of machine guns, you know, their ability to move quickly.
Small unit tactics.
Small unit tactics, exactly right. Yeah, go ahead.
It lends to that's exactly what it is. It's the difference between like large, massive armies and a general choosing where they go to young people, young men, like 35-year-old men saying, like, you five go here, I'm going to hold this spot and bring back ammo. And because that guy brought back ammo, it halted a Japanese assault or something.
Yeah.
But that's the one thing about World War II games that we would bring up. They're always about Nazis.
Yes,
they're
are.
very
You're
rarely
never
about
fighting
the Japanese. And
Never
there's a
fighting-
reason for that. It's
Yeah.
because all of the systems that we're playing on were developed by Japanese people.
yeah, maybe
Yeah.
I'm assigning a value expression to something that doesn't exist. The more you guys talk about it, the more I realize that war, World War II, just lends itself to really excellent gameplay.
Yeah.
Even World War I, like you said, they had to bring in the prototypes. So maybe my head's up my own ass there a little bit. But and you know, I don't want to sound like I'm preaching or anything. It was just an observation that I'm thinking through. Whatever. I would love to see an FPS based in like the Civil War, knowing that like the gunfire would be slower and it's less accurate. I still think if you did it, if you did it a little hard,
Someone did that.
if you did sort of like a sim, you know what I mean, like so you're not 360 no scoping.
I never played it, but I don't know if it was the America's Army team or if it was someone working with the. I was almost certainly on the Half-Life engine, because I remember seeing it around, you know, CS 1.6. But there definitely was like a Civil War first-person shooter that came out in like the 2000s. I never put my hands on it though. It's out there. We should check it out.
Well, I think with the new VR headsets, there's incredible potential to make certain periods in history more exciting. Like playing, for instance, you know, if you're going back to the time of Achilles and the ancient Greeks and even, you know, ancient Romans, like the idea of sword fighting, it doesn't really lend itself super well to, you know, touching buttons. But if you're actually holding onto a device with a VR headset and you have like a shield in your left hand, like that could actually be kind of much more interesting to have like a sword fight, you know, where you could develop skill that wouldn't really be possible if you're just hitting, you know, up, down, A, B, like,
Yeah,
you know.
being a single member of like a Napoleonic unit approaching another big block of men. When your weapons are not super accurate, it's probably going to be a lot more exciting if you're sitting in VR and you can turn your head to the left and see another dude right there. Like, oh shit!
Yeah, right.
That would be insane.
Yeah, or how about even flying planes? Like, because in real life, when they were flying planes, like you just had to literally look over your shoulder, look above you to like see if there were planes, and they're always like twisting their neck, looking left and right, make sure they didn't get caught. And now you could be literally, sitting in your chair pretending to fly a plane, like looking all over the place, looking over your shoulder. The sun's setting, it's in your eyes.
I remember reading
excited
like
about VR.
some fuckboy, like they didn't even have. Some fuckboy finally, when they were flying up there in World War I, finally decided to bring a gun and shoot at another airplane with his pistol. And everybody was like, well, I guess we need guns now. Thanks, dude.
All right.
Because up to that point, they just kind of flew around. They're like, hey, whoa.
Drop stuff.
Yeah. they had, bombs the size of your hand. They were throwing it at the ground.
Dropping hand grenades, literally. That was it. That was just like a slightly bigger hand grenade, and it was the Germans who did it first, as always. And then they were like, let's use mustard gas. We just drop
Oh, it's a great idea.
canisters of gas, and then
Hooray.
like we need to shoot those planes.
Mustard gas is a gameplay element of the World War I game that's out right now, right?
Battlefield 1, yes.
That's fucked up, dude.
Oh, yeah.
That is
Yeah.
fucked.
Is it any more fucked up than when Call of Duty had you commit a terrorist act?
Actually, you weren't forced to do anything. You did. You could have gotten through that mission. So we're talking specifically. One of the Call of Duties had a
Modern Warfare 2.
Modern Warfare 2 had a mission where you went through
the Russian airport shooting.
Yes.
Well, yeah, they had like Russian agents go through an airport and shoot a bunch of civilians. And there's a famous line: "Remember, no Russian." So because they don't want to let on that they're Russian agents or whatever, and they just mow down these civilians in this airport. I don't remember the rest of the mission, but there's a big uproar, and they said, "Well, the player is not forced to pull the trigger. You can go through that whole mission
You can walk through without pulling the trigger.
without pulling the trigger."
But you're still like complicit in it. So.
Right?
Yeah,
But, yeah, I don't know. Like,
You can even opt to not even play the whole mission. You don't
You
even
can
have to walk
skip it.
through
you could
it.
also not play
Yeah,
the
you can
game, I
just skip
suppose.
Which is like crazy that because now you have to pay for everything, and they gave you a game. They're like, here's a mission you just don't even have to play.
Yeah.
It's a real whatever. I mean, I played it. It was fun in that it shocks you, and then I was over it. And it wasn't even like all that.
No.
They could have not had the mission and made it just a newspaper clipping and like with some expository dialogue leading out of the previous or into the next mission easily. But I support the decision to give you that level of interactivity and to really kind of step all over your own morals.
I
'Cause that's
recall.
what I mean, not that it's a great fucking story, but that is an important element of good storytelling.
Yeah.
I recall there was an uproar in one of the an uproar. Some people had a problem with one of the flight sims. It was like Airplane Simulator 10 or something. Where you
Worst one. Wrong.
You simulate flying. And you can fly over New York, and the game still had the Twin Towers in it. And they're like, "Oh, well, people could crash a 747 in these towers. We better change the game so they can't."
That's hilarious.
And there's not even like an animation for like you just hit it and the game's like, whatever. But I was like, that's preposterous. My point about like the nerve gas being fucked. And, even that mission, the terrorist agent mission or whatever it was just, I think that there's this weird, like I said, mental distance between different gameplay aspects in different games based on the subject. And it's like, I'm all for pushing the boundaries. Like, leave the ability to fly into the towers in the game. Leave that crazy mission in the game, play any war you want. I think that we shouldn't limit our expression, but I think that the community needs to acknowledge that we're already doing things that are pretty fucked. Like, it's like when people stop and think that there's an inflatable kids slide of the Titanic sinking. Like, it's a big blow-up slide of the fucking Titanic sinking.
Awesome.
You know what I mean? In 100 years, are we going to have like a tipsy tower?
It's a
the kids
perfect
are sliding
opportunity
down?
for an educational moment, Bill.
But you know, it's just I think we need to acknowledge, like as a community, that the stuff that we haven't touched yet isn't the only thing that is possibly fucked. We are already playing through games that are fucked. It's fucked, man.
Mm-hmm.
Manhunt.
Grand Theft Auto.
Oh, remember
You're nothing but terrible pieces of shit in those games.
And like that is like overtly violent. I don't even mean overtly violent. Like the games deal with subjects that you're like, if I had some level of reverence for the tragedy that this event was, maybe I wouldn't make a game about it. But we're playing games, so
Yeah.
Well, can I back up a second?
Yeah, please.
To Flight Simulator, in that it was one of my first games for the Windows 3.1. It was that or the Windows 95. I forget which one I actually had first. But yeah, we're talking like 64-bit Flight Simulator or worse. I don't even know. But one of the old boys, okay? And yeah, I could pick the New York, I could pick JFK, and yeah, I could fly right into those towers. And you know what happened? The screen paused. The window had some very slow-moving cracks that would promulgate throughout it, and it'd be like, "You crashed, idiot. Restart." It grades you as a failure when you crash into things, you snowflakes. It's like really simple to understand. Flight Simulator, the goal of most flights is to take off and land safely.
Well, Jake,
it's not Terrorist Simulator,
they could've-
even if you try to make it that way.
No, Jake, they can use it, and because of that simulator on that Windows 95 PC, which ISIS definitely has access to,
Clearly.
they learned how to fly planes and not land them.
That's exactly how that
That's
happened.
how it happened.
It was actually my computer.
It probably was, or it was mine.
They have secretly been hiding in my mom's basement.
They
hooking it up.
They were trying to frame you because you're Jewish.
Did I take
Also, yes.
did I take drugs and I'm now tripping? What the fuck is going on?
Dude, I could have sworn you told me they took it to that cave in Kabul somewhere.
Listen, now we're getting into some state secret level shit, and we need to cease and desist. Because we're all on a list already.
Yeah, I don't know. I get this weird sense when I talk to people about different games, and it's not whatever. I find this weird like self-righteous expression like, yeah, I'm playing this game and I'm shooting these guys, and I'm like you're still murdering people. Like, you know what I mean? Like, you're simulating murdering people, and I think that we should play those games. I think that those games are fun.
It might be justified murder, but it's still
Right, but if you're good, you've got no room to be self-righteous playing any fucking video game where you're murdering people. It's just a game, and that's the thing. If we all take a step back and we say, you know what, there isn't really any moral superiority when we're playing any fucking game here. We're just playing a game. Just leave it at that, and it makes discussion so much easier, because then you can do whatever error you want, because you go, let's not bring fucking morality or value assessment in here. Let's just make a great game, and that's what I'm looking for.
You're asking way too much, Bill, and you need to really lower your expectations.
There is a game that fills these requests.
What is it?
Fills all your
Are you
holes.
gonna make another fucking troll joke? You
No,
son of a
and
bitch.
it's called Wolfenstein 2.
Oh, what a
perfect segue.
great segue! Because I know that Chris wanted to adjust his original review.
Yeah.
And then you wanted to give us your viewpoint. So, Chris,
I did.
please start us off.
So my initial when I first discussed the game, I was only about halfway through, and I was very much enjoying the game. I thought it was beautiful. I thought the soundtrack was great. I thought the gameplay was very good. I thought the story was very good. Then I went back and I did the episode, and we went home and I played some more, and then the game was over. It was just over. It just stopped. Literally, the whole thing just stopped abruptly. Though the whole final scene was kind of cool. It just happened. And then after that, I was just like, okay, cool. Maybe there's like some other kind of mode or something that I can play. I can go back and do. Nope, it's over. And then I looked at my time played on the game, and I got all the side missions done and the main storyline done. 16 hours. I paid $60 for that game.
Yes, you did, and you enjoyed all 16 hours.
I
didn't
enjoyed
you?
all 16 hours
And the only time you felt bad was when that 16 hours was over.
when it was over. Exactly.
Well,
Yeah.
I mean, it didn't meet my rule though.
Yeah, it's now $4 an hour.
Yeah,
It's a $4.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yes,
Yeah.
yes. Yes, I totally understand. These games are short. They are not long. But the reason that they are that short is because they have crammed a bunch of great stories, a bunch of great characters, and just like insane violence.
Yeah. Like
Insanely
the
Not-
game-
that's not the reason why they're short.
No, I mean,
Come on.
No, that is the reason why they're short. These
that's an
this isn't-
excuse
this
to keep
isn't-
it short. It's not why they're short.
No, they're short because it's 16 hours of playability, and it still takes up 60 gigs. It's
Yeah.
because the game is beautiful.
The game
It's short because
nonstop.
they didn't have the resources to make it longer, and they could sell it for $60 and have it be 16 hours.
Well, now
Right.
they just came out with some DLC for it. But
What's
here,
DLC?
what's that?
What is DLC for those of us who don't know?
Oh, downloadable content.
Okay, there we go. We're good.
We've actually had a discussion of what's DLC, what's downloadable content as opposed to like a patch and to an expansion or whatever.
Yeah.
Pretty much nowadays, anything that you can download that adds anything
It's
to a
DLC.
game is DLC.
Right.
Yeah.
DLC used to be
DLC.
free.
Yeah.
Free.
It is.
And
it
now
still
you
is if
pay
you play.
$30
Pepper Farm
for
members.
sometimes.
Yeah.
Grand Theft Auto 5 will still allow you to play online for free with.
Well, it's because they got those microtransactions, dog.
That's why you cheat, dog.
So if you're not familiar with
That's why you tell Rockstar to go fuck themselves and find a way to glitch through that heist.
if you're not used to if you're not familiar with microtransactions, it's games will add often they'll give you a goal like you got to make $1 million to buy this in-game product, and you can play the game for 10 hours to get $1 million, or you can spend $2 and get the $1 million. It's a small transaction, and it's becoming the way, especially mobile games are making money, but it's also the way that a lot of big-time console games are making cash too, and that's Rockstar is really utilizing that with Grand Theft Auto 5.
I just want to add, Wolfenstein has no microtransactions.
Nope.
Not one of the 3 games has a single microtransaction. Everything that is unlocked through playing. It is a beautiful game to play.
Mhm.
I don't necessarily enjoy the dual wielding.
Yeah, just give us
Function?
give us your full review on that.
Okay, yeah. So Wolfenstein games, they're fun. They got wacky characters who are somehow believable while they do crazy shit. And you
Really
brutally-
crazy shit.
really crazy shit, and you just brutally.
What makes the
Kill
characters
Nazis.
great and wacky?
That they're living in a post-apocalyptic, like Nazi-dominated world.
So what's the premise of Wolfenstein? I suppose we should just
we'll
touch
start
on
with the
that.
beginning. There's 3 games. The first one was Wolfenstein: The New Order.
Three modern games.
3 modern games.
Yeah.
There's Wolfenstein games that go all the way back to the original, like FPSs came out with Doom and Quake.
Which you could play those both respectively in
Y-
their games.
Yes, which is another thing I love. You can play the original Wolfenstein in Wolfenstein 2: The New Colossus.
Yes.
And it's a lot of fun, and you can get a couple more hours of playtime
A
if
little
you
bit. Yeah, I put some time.
if you
into
try
it.
and play that. So basically, you play a character named B.J. Blazkowicz, who is a Jewish American who fought in World War II, and instead of winning, we started to lose due to the Nazis' rapid advancement of occult-like technologies.
Yeah.
Yeah, classic Spielbergian.
Yes.
You know, Nazis are the bad guys, and they got something even worse.
Right.
than-
Dark magic.
yeah, there's Nazis, but like twice as bad. And it's just a really. You've only played the second one, right?
Yeah, the new Colossus.
The new Colossus, which is the newest game. I recommend playing them in chronological order, starting with the Old Blood, going into the New Order, and then going into New Colossus. The story is so good. It's so interesting.
It's fascinating.
Like
BJ's story, like
particularly in the second one.
yeah.
The first
Oh.
one's just like a cool action movie that you get to play for 16 hours, which is awesome. It's
Yeah.
like playing. It's like the first time you saw Die Hard, except it lasts 16 hours and you
Instead
get to
of
do
2.
it all.
Yeah,
like
right.
yeah, it's
Yeah.
it's great. And then they're like, well, here's a prequel, And that one's actually just fighting Nazis, and the other ones you're fighting Nazis and some mechanical Nazis.
Yeah.
In the new one, I think you even get to cut up some Klansmen.
Oh yeah. That's great.
Which
when
is,
you
which
go
is
and
a
do
lot
the
of fun.
assassination missions,
Yeah.
the Klansmen start popping up.
It's such a creative environments too. None of the maps are ever repetitive, but the one thing they offer the dual wielding to make it look like a classic like 80s action movie.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I wasn't a huge fan of the dual wielding though.
No,
I
it's
didn't really. I
useless.
didn't. I mean, the only reason I pretty much used it was just to get the perk that you got for using it.
Yeah, but
Did anybody read about that that guy who attacked the police out in Harrisburg a week or two ago? When I was reading a story. He like shot at these police. I think he hit somebody, but he didn't really hurt anybody. And then he was shot and killed. But they're like, yeah, they fired at him. They fired at the police with 2 pistols. And I was like, did this guy come out like guns akimbo? Like,
Right.
people do that in real life? What?
I mean,
It doesn't usually work.
that's
No.
what was interesting about that is it's like you have 2 machine guns. So you're spraying twice the amount of bullets and you are hitting a third of the things that you're trying to hit. Like it is just so bad.
You could dual wield fucking shotguns that are pretty much automatic
oh my
shotguns.
god. Yeah, and in a corridor. In a corridor with an enemy, and you will fail to miss them because
Fail
it's
to hit
just so. Yeah, you fail to hit them. You will succeed in missing them.
Yes.
That being said, the single, when you're just rolling around with a regular gun, it's phenomenal.
Yeah.
That's kind of accurate. Like you really can't shoot 2 guns at once.
No,
you know?
no, yeah.
Navy SEALs aren't running around with two
I've
two
done
pistols
it.
in their hand. Like
It's fun.
Yeah.
It's pointless.
right.
Do
right.
you guys have any qualms with weapons that, like, where you click, it actually hits? Like, gun wandering when you're holding down the trigger, like, doesn't exactly grind my gears or anything. But if a game does, like Counter-Strike, doesn't take into account bullet drop, Arma does, and that's great. But Counter-Strike doesn't, and that doesn't fucking bother me because I just, in my head, I correct the lore like, oh, I'm playing as the fucking Spetsnaz or like the SEAL Team 6. These guys know about bullet drop, so my character is compensating, and that's why I'm hitting exactly where I'm aiming.
I feel like in Counter-Strike that most of the time your ranges are so close that it doesn't matter. Anyway,
Bullet drop doesn't come into effect until you're talking something well over.
well, it technically comes into effect immediately, but functionally, no.
Functionally,
Right.
it doesn't
Yeah.
come into effect for at least 300 yards, probably
Depends
more.
on the bullet, but
Yeah, I
but
mean-
like,
And where you're sighted.
but
at.
really, unless you're trying to either exceed the typical range of the firearm you're using, or you're sniping out to a more extreme distance, it doesn't matter.
Well,
in the
okay,
scheme of any given of your average shooter.
Even in a
game.
sniper on a
that's sort of
standard
a-
Call of Duty map isn't going to
Yeah, that's-
experience real drop.
I mean, they might a bit if they're like corner to cornering.
Yeah.
So imagine a scenario, and this is how I'll get the answer to my question. Imagine a scenario where you could shoot 500 yards and you should be exhibiting bullet drop. If a game doesn't include it, it doesn't bother me. Does it bother anybody else in the room?
No.
It depends.
Yeah.
Yeah, it does. It depends.
Unless someone's trying to make a hyper real game, but even then, like I don't think you could, unless you're playing with like the VR thing that I was mentioning earlier, where you're holding the gun in your hand. I just don't know if the controls could really accurately, reflect aiming.
There's
You know.
legit bullet drop in Fortnite.
Okay.
Fortnite, if you're sniping, you are legitimately dealing with bullet drop.
Actually, to that end, Frank and Lisa just entered the room. Everybody, Frank and
Oh,
Lisa.
yeah.
Yeah,
Hey,
if
welcome.
we're going to discuss bullet drop, we need to discuss Frank and Lisa being
I
here.
don't know if you want, I thought
everyone.
I'd just be a good time to let everyone know that you guys actually decided to show up for a change.
Yeah.
And Frank, did you this without getting into PUBG, because I'm sure you'll probably want to talk about that later, maybe in the second half.
Yeah.
He just mentioned Fortnite. Did you have any experience with bullet drop in that game?
Yeah, it's there.
Yeah.
And
Did it-
without getting too much into PUBG, it is also in PUBG and much
Well,
more.
PUBG runs off the Arma
Yes.
engine.
They're actually both off the same engine.
Really?
Yeah, they're both off the Unreal Engine. It's just that Fortnite is obviously much simpler.
Thing
I'm
is so
sorry. I
flexible.
guess I should say I think Fortnite, PUBG, isn't it a mod of Arma?
Yes, and that's the thing is that they both run on the Unreal Engine. It's all of these games that are licensing the Unreal Engine and all the other engines that are out there. The Frostbite engine is the other big one, really. They're pretty polished to the point where it's almost plug and play. Obviously, it's not actually plug and play, but like when you use a mod editor, right, for any of the other games, like it's not like you have to sit there and recreate physics.
Right.
It's all there in the engine. You're just using the different APIs for that.
Can you do me a favor and forgive me for asking? Can you give me like a brief, maybe 4-sentence summation of what an engine is for people who aren't familiar with the term?
Yeah, that's like that's the base code of the game that is running things like the physics for the environment that you're in, what's actually rendering all the textures, basically the very core stuff that's you're building the rest of the game environment on top of.
Okay, so did you find that the bullet drop itself enhanced the game, or is it just another aspect that you could take or leave?
I personally prefer it because it just doesn't make sense for you to shoot 500 yards and the bullet to just be a straight line. Gravity does exist, and it's to me it's counterintuitive not to have it in.
Yeah, see, and that's what I was saying. I just in my head I write it off. If in Counter-Strike I'm shooting over a distance or whatever, I'm like, my character is SEAL Team 6. He's compensating for it.
Yeah.
I'm just pointing where I want the bullet to go.
The one thing that pisses me off in Fortnite is there's really no way to accurately account for the bullet drop, whereas in PUBG and Battlefield, right, the Battlefield series also uses bullet drop, but in both of those games the optics that you use, you can actually re-zero to a particular distance so that you don't have to worry about it.
No way.
Yeah,
Jeez,
especially even in Battlefield 1 particularly did this really well.
Battlefield 3, 4, and 1 were the ones that
Yeah.
really utilized it to great effect because those maps are massive.
Even on in Fortnite, your scope isn't even notched.
Yeah.
To show you even in Call of Duty, because
Yeah.
you can't zero in for
Yeah.
different
Mhm.
lengths, but their scopes are usually notched.
Yeah, and so it's the same thing in Fortnite. They're using real... I'm sorry, not in Fortnite, PUBG.
Yeah.
They're using real optics. They're basically just, buying optics, I guess, out there and being like, okay, we're going to use this as the 8x scope.
Mm-hmm.
And then you'll see the notch for 100 yards, the notch for 200 yards, the notch for 300 yards. And if you want to get really good at shooting in PUBG and you don't know how to actually use the optics that are out there, you can go on YouTube and there's videos. It's like, okay, so if the guy's 200 yards away, you want to line up with this notch, or, you can re-zero it to 200 yards, but it's in there.
Dude,
Wow.
I gotta say,
That's pretty cool.
I had no idea how in depth the bullet path simulations were in Arma / PUBG. I watched a YouTube video on Arma 2, and he talked about the differences in bullet behavior going from Arma to Arma 2, and he showed the behavior of bullets fired from different caliber weapons against different strength walls, and he applied a script that would graph the flight path of the bullet and would change the color when it lost energy in increments of 25%. It was unbelievable. He shot through 9 boards, 9 board walls in a row, and higher cal, the 50 cal went all the way through and still came out on the other end with lethal force. But if you shot a pistol submachine gun, it only went through 3 boards and came out on the other end, and it would it could still hit your player character, but it wouldn't deliver any real damage. The amount of calculation and simulation that's going on in this game is unbelievable. If you're shooting at a building and you have a shallow angle, so you're not directly facing it, you're off to the side shooting at a sort of an angle, it will calculate a variable amount of deflections, bullets that just go straight up, just bounce off the other side. I have never played a game with that kind of behavior. In Counter-Strike, you can shoot through wood panels, and if a person's within 2 feet of the other side, they get hit with a standard amount of less damage, and if they're not there, they don't get hit. This game calculates bullet velocity all the way through the barrier to whatever distance that the bullet would continue to fly, and it accounts for that in the player damage or the person being hit. They also, if they run out of energy, they bounce off the ground and ricochet up, and that can hit you. It's I can't believe somebody made this game. It's amazing. I heard if you don't want to, the best way to play that game, if you're just looking for a fucking game to go around and shoot your friend, Arma is not for you. But if you want to get on a group chat and run a 3-hour operation sim, apparently that's a thing people do, and it's amazing. Apparently it is a great time. I just want to say I was blown away by the bullet physics in the Unreal Engine. I don't know if you even knew that.
Yeah, no. Well, so the funny thing is, like, I maybe this is just me being a math major speaking, but like, to me, programming wise, that wouldn't be too difficult to put in there. It's really processing wise, like being able to get that in there and have the rest of the engine optimized to be able optimized enough to be able to run all of the other calculations at the same time. That's the impressive part.
My friend, that is everything that a developer has ever tried to do.
I know. That's the thing. This, not that most people out there would probably think this is simple, but, you know, like, if you went to school for some sort of engineering or math or physics or anything like that, being able to come up with, like, the equation for a bullet vector is not going to be all that difficult. You run some data, basically testing some rounds out there, and okay, you run some probably like some regressions or some differential equations, and boom, you know what the different bullet paths are going to be. The computer is going to do most of the work for you. Mm-hmm. The impressive part is getting that in there and being able to piece everything together so that, you know, the thousands upon thousands of rounds that are fired during any particular match of PUBG or Arma or DayZ also runs on the same engine, I believe. So does H1Z1, I believe. All these games run on the same platform, basically. The impressive part is that they were able to squeeze all this stuff in there and still have the game run. Now, I know people that are now playing PUBG on Xbox will say, like, well, yeah, but barely. But, I mean, on PC, at least right now, PUBG runs pretty well. And it's impressive how much stuff they've crammed into that game, and it still runs. It still runs.
Okay. Anybody have any final thoughts on this game before we shift to the? Okay. Yeah. No. All right. Cool. We're gonna take a quick break. Quick bathroom break. We'll come back with the topic I've wanted to talk about. Stay tuned.
My grandfather was the same way. I remember like one of the last times I went over to his house when he was still alive, I like brought a case of beer. I was like, I'll bring a case of beer to my grandfather. Brought him a case of Yingling, and it's still there. He's been dead for 5 years.
Have you?
It's like still sitting there, and it's like been warm and like sitting on the porch.
Have you guys been privy to this new phenomenon that is Earth-chan? No. It is. No, it's Earth anthropomorphized as a really cute anime girl. So like she's got like a uniform on, and like instead of it being blue, it's like the galaxy with stars on it, and her hair is the globe. Like it's like blue and green for the continents and this, and like they're like take care of Earth-chan, and they put a little like no well of course she blushes. But they put a little like one of those like masks over her that they like if you're sick and you have a cough.
SARS mask.
Yeah, like they put a SARS mask because she's
bird
sick.
flu.
And what is it? They've like made a couple comics where all the other planets are also anthropomorphized, and they make fun of Earth-chan because she has a. They say she has a small bust, and she keeps going, I'm not flat! It literally has motivated people to donate to, like, conservation. Like, anthropomorphizing Earth has made people donate to organizations to continue to support the Earth.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah,
I love it.
That it takes that much for people to care.
Whatever.
It takes
I mean, if
being a
it's
cute
fun.
girl.
The
The environment alone is not enough.
All right, Frank.
Now
Are
they
you
just
ready
need to
for
do like
this?
vaccine chan.
Yeah,
and
let's
stuff
do
like
it.
that.
We are going to start on the topic that I have wanted to discuss. I'm going to give a brief introduction for everybody who's not familiar with this idea of swatting because it is truly so fucking ridiculous that I couldn't believe it was real when I first learned about it. And the thing is, the community in which it happens, it has become so normalized for them. Swatting, okay, starting at the beginning, if you're familiar with the website Twitch, it is basically a website that allows gamers to stream themselves playing games to a wider audience. And a lot of these individuals are very, very good at playing games, and they have quite a large following, thousands of people. There's so much nuance to that community and culture that I'm not privy to because I don't follow streamers, which is ridiculous. I guess I should since I run a fucking podcast. But somebody at some point decided that they found out the address. We dance around who we are and where we live to try to discourage this kind of behavior. But somebody somewhere decided that they knew a streamer's address. They called the police and said, at that address, there is a hostage situation. A man with a gun in an active threat scenario.
Oh my gosh.
Oh, you think that's funny? Just watch what happens, though.
The police show up,
Oh, fuck yeah.
kick in the door, and put everybody on the ground. If you look up swatting, there are countless videos, and like it has become so commonplace that streamers, they hear somebody kick in their door and they just put their hands over their head now because they know what's going on. They're getting swatted. It's unbelievable. And you say, well, how are people not getting in trouble? Well, turns out it is really, really easy now with the internet to spoof your phone number. And spoofing is when you say, I'm calling from 215-555-1212 when you're actually calling from any other number in the whole world. So they don't know who made the call. So there aren't consequences.
No consequences at all.
And up to this point, the community, like, there has been this insane normalization because it happens all the time. And the people who are calling in these swatting events are like 13, 14, and 15.
Yeah.
Up until today, well, up until a few days ago, everybody's been saying someday somebody is going to be killed. But nobody had. Well, a couple of days ago, two individuals were talking to each other online. And the one guy, the way that I read, he says, go ahead and swat me. And he puts out an address. It's not his address. He puts out a random address. The guy he's playing against calls in an active shooter situation on this address. He says there was an argument. Somebody shot the father in the head, and he's got hostages. The police show up, and one of the inhabitants of the building comes to the front door. This guy is a married father of two. As he opens the door, a policeman shoots him dead. And they go in and they cuff everybody else in the house. Somebody was fucking killed from swatting. Like, now, there was an arrest. They arrested the guy who did the swatting. But personally, I don't think that's enough. I'm of the opinion that if you are goading somebody into swatting you, you are complicit in some manner.
Especially if you're knowingly putting out
A fake
a
address.
random
A fake
address.
address.
Absolutely.
That
Part of
guy,
it.
I think, should be in pretty big trouble too. But it's the kid who did the swatting later tweeted, I didn't kill anybody because I didn't pull the trigger and I'm not on a SWAT team as a profession. It's like, I know, I mean, I'm academically aware that people with that level of emotional distance exist. I just can't fucking fathom. Like, it still blows my mind. It still blows my mind.
Well, that kid's culpable. He's not as culpable. Like, did the guy answer the door with a gun in his hand? Because if
Well,
he
I
didn't,
think what happened
the
is
cop shouldn't have shot him.
they
Like,
answered
it's that
the
simple.
door and they told him to, put his hands up slowly, and I think he reached towards his belt. He didn't touch anything.
Nope.
There wasn't a gun. He was not armed, and
Don't do it.
someone just immediately shot him dead.
Sorry, that is still stricter ROE than fucking Afghanistan.
I didn't.
Yeah.
I didn't read anything about him reaching for anything. The only thing that I saw, and it was when the story was unfolding, was that he answered the door, and then an officer discharged his weapon, and the man was killed.
See,
I read an article of
As if
it
they're separate
today.
Yeah.
And they said they saw him reaching for something near his belt, which
Not
is where
cool.
guns are sometimes kept.
But that's
usually kept.
that's what
Sometimes.
anyone would
Well, that's what
say.
I mean,
If
but-
he had his hands above
Let's-
his the whole time.
Let's try to be strict about speaking over each other. We have so many people in the room right now. Let's try.
And then one of the officers or whoever was there fired one shot, and he later died at the hospital. So he wasn't armed in any way. I didn't read anything else about whether or not he was being compliant, non-compliant, but guy answered the door and he died.
Yeah.
I just can't imagine, coming to my own door in my home, whether or not I'm armed, and being shot for it. You know what I mean? Why would you ever answer the door? What are you supposed to do? Lay down on your belly with your hands on your head? Because somebody tweeted your fucking address? I can't even process this. I cannot even begin to process this event.
People suck, dude. It's the same part of the people who do shit like this are the same people who were SS officers. It's there's a genetic thing. They're just shitty fucking people out there. And this is some random it's an insane thing to do. It's not a practical joke. You're absolutely right. If you tell a bunch of cops there's an active shooter, they are ready to go. They're ready to die, and they're ready to try and kill someone before
I
they
don't
die.
think they're not. Yeah, they're not ready to die. They're ready to go
Kill.
there and kill.
Well, yeah,
everyone
but they're
at the
ready to
scene.
put themselves
Yeah.
in harm's way to do that.
I mean,
which
but
I'm
I
not
do-
going to fault him, but I am going to fault him for shooting somebody who didn't have a gun.
I mean,
I'm not going to.
I think having or not having a gun is a little bit misleading, because if I'm shot at my own front door and they turn my body over and I have my pistol on my back and they while he was armed, but I didn't pull it.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
I appreciate the idea. I imagine, in Philadelphia, it was going through a rash of home invasions. 3 men were entering homes of old people, holding them at gunpoint and robbing them. If we were holed up here, whispering into the phone, someone's home invading our fucking podcast, get over here, and the cops came in and took care of business, that would be amazing. I would feel so saved. I understand this idea that these people want to help, and that's what makes the subject so tough. How the fuck do you deal with it other than just not having people continue to perpetuate the crime? It happens so frequently that this was mathematically bound to happen. But what do you do? What do you do as a community?
Especially when you can't track the people who are calling.
Yeah,
Right.
I mean,
Except for this one instance where they did arrest someone, but
I'll be curious to see if this because maybe a bunch of 14-year-old, 13-year-olds are doing this. They don't really understand the real-world consequences that someone could get killed. They think
Clearly.
it's funny. I'm not even sure if your brain's fully developed at 13 or 14. But maybe now that this has happened, maybe that will be a massive decrease and it will stop. That would make me happy if that happened. But maybe it goes the other way. Maybe this, maybe it increases. And that would have me very scared.
I think, if anything, there will be a massive increase in consequences for it, because now it's established that someone can get killed from this. So every time that happens, everybody's going to be like, "Well, we're going to clamp down on this." It's like when somebody dies at a bad intersection, in a bad car wreck because people are running through a red light or going too fast down a hill or something like that. There's a big car crash, somebody dies, there's a cop there handing out tickets left and right for a couple of weeks until people get the idea. Oh, there was actually a place near where I grew up that this happened all the time, where there'd be somebody would die in a car accident, and then you'd see a cop there all day every day for 2 months, and there'd be they'd give out 1,000 tickets, literally 1,000 tickets at one particular location, until word got around that there's always going to be a state trooper there. Don't go 55 miles an hour because the speed limit's 25.
Mm-hmm.
And then people would slow down, and it would last 2-3 years, and then someone else would die, and it would happen, cycle, rinse and repeat. I think that's kind of what might happen here, is people realize, like, okay, like, we need to stop this. They'll clamp down on it. Anybody who does it is going to get, the entire force of the law enforcement apparatus tracking them down. And, if it's a 14-year-old kid, he's going to go to juvie until he's 18.
I just, and that's great or whatever, I guess. He goes to jail till he's fucking 14, but then he gets out and that guy is still dead forever. And the thing that makes it so strange for me is that these individuals are 13, 14, 15, and they don't have their cognitive abilities fully developed. But, like, this guy is dead forever, and the laws are in place to put people in jail. I mean, they're already there. It's already a crime to falsely file a report, to call in a false 911 call or whatever. Like, the laws exist, but for whatever reason, they're just not. Historically, they don't seem to have been enforced vehemently, and I don't know why, because but I've had this conversation with other people before. Like, an encounter with the police it's more dangerous than not encountering the police. You know what I mean? Because they have guns, they might shoot you.
Yeah.
For reaching for your waistband or whatever. And I just don't understand. Do people not think that that's the case? Do people not understand that other people lying to the police and saying that a criminal exists in an innocent person's home is inherently dangerous? Who is this waking up? Who the fuck didn't know that? Like, do those people exist, or am I crazy?
Just as many people are evil, there's 100 times more people who are just stupid. Like, everybody in this room right now, out of the 7 people, right, 7 of us, we're all above average intelligence, and I'm probably the lowest.
I am the Rick and Morty fan, so I'm the smartest guy.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you're a fucking savant. Yeah. But like people, they're like genuinely just stupid people, like people who don't know how to drive. Like, those people who don't know how to drive, like, that's how they operate. Like, they would think, like, oh, I don't know, I'll just SWAT somebody.
It'll be funny.
It'll be real funny. It is kind of funny to, like, call the cops on somebody. It's not funny to be like, there's an active shooter and he's holding like 4 people hostage, because that doesn't send like the cops over like it's not like he's like, yo, I saw this guy smoking a bowl on a website and I know his address.
Or have their music way too loud.
Yeah, they're playing music really loud, and he sends the cops to like the guy whose Twitch he's watching. Oh, that's pretty funny.
Still unacceptable in my book.
Oh yeah. Still unacceptable, but also like much funnier because nobody's gonna get shot.
That's not true.
Hopefully,
anytime
he's not black.
I mean, if you're acting a fool, you can still fuck around and get yourself shot.
I don't know, dude. Every time I ever see, that's what I mean. If you're acting a fool and you're in an interaction with a cop, like, you should probably get shot, because it's a serious fucking moment. If a cop's there, it's a serious fucking thing, and you just act like, oh, I want to not get in trouble, so let me act like a normal person. Or you could be a fucking
.28, not know what the fuck you're talking about, and get shot 5 times with an AR-15 in a fucking hallway.
That drunk.
Or you could be disabled and get tased to death because they don't know you're disabled, even though you're being told they're disabled by people who know them, who are around.
That's why we should start tattooing people on their forearms with, like,
Jesus Christ,
numbers. And certain numbers will dictate, like,
serial numbers.
No,
numbers?
That's as much of a serial number as your social security number.
I'm just like, I'm not trying to cast judgment on any organization, at all. I think from a pragmatic point of view, if you have anybody empowered to use physical force to enforce, I mean, Christ, if you're in a room full of like 10 bouncers and you have an encounter with them, they might beat your ass to the fucking ground. Like, bouncers have killed people by choking them out, holding them down in their own vomit. Like, it's just engaging people who will act against you, who are empowered to do it, is inherently risky. I guess the thing that I can't wrap my head around is how people can be so devoid. That's not the word.
Cavalier?
Yeah, okay. Cavalier. I wanted to say deft, but that's not the right word. They're so without a sense of consequence. There are a million things that you can do in your life, and I think becoming a late 20s man, I reflect back on my actions as a youthful man, and I look and I say those things that I did while they had a low probability of catastrophic events, I would not do that shit again, because in my mind the payoff is very, very low, and the potential loss, while unlikely, is death. And then you are dead forever, or maiming, or, going to, like, it. I feel like this kind of behavior, and the only way I can wrap my head around it is people who have a total lack of appreciation of long-lasting consequence. It's just people who don't understand that there are things that can happen in your life that will affect you forever.
I mean, I hope that, as you were saying, Bill, that it's so hard for the authorities to crack down on something like this. I hope that the gaming community understands how fucked up this was and maybe takes it into their own hands. And, like, if you see someone commenting, I'll be like, hey, that's not fucking cool. Like, you can't do that. And maybe that'll kind of, if the gaming community as a whole has a sense of this is not okay,
Right.
then maybe these little idiot 13-year-olds are going to be like, oh, maybe it's not a great idea.
And I think what you're saying is correct. Like, they can legislate all they want. And that was my point, saying there's already rules out there and it's still happening.
Yeah, it's not
they
working.
can enforce as much as they like. I don't think it'll matter.
I think one of the first things they can do is any mention of swatting, right, on a chat or anything like that, insta-ban. Insta-permaban. No second chances.
Any mention?
Like, if, like, you say, like, go ahead and swat me or something like that, like, yeah, insta-permaban.
I don't know, man.
That's the
think,
crackdown
like,
that it
when
needs.
That's some limiting free speech.
I do
Crackdown
not
shit.
want to infringe upon the ability to crack one wise joke.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, that's my point.
Because
but,
we are
like,
equivalently crass on other subjects, I feel.
no,
like.
I mean, like, any
I just made a Holocaust
any mention
joke.
of, like, with actual intent, right? Now, obviously, that's the one problem
That's
is
the
always
hardest
going
thing
to
to
be.
demonstrate.
I know it's hard. It's the hardest thing to demonstrate, but that's why there are mods out there. And, like, the consequence for this in the, when you actually boil it down is, oh no, my Twitch account got banned.
Well, I mean, what you're doing, I'm sorry, what that would do would put the onus on corporations to police these individuals. And while I think that might be a step that could limit this behavior, ultimately, I don't think the amount of enforcement or laws or whatever that you're going to employ is going to change anything. The mentality of the community itself needs to change, so
I
the
agree with
behavior is
that.
just not exhibited. And here's the problem: we were already talking. We've talked about how a target of, like, the Call of Duty series are like 13-year-old kids. These people brand new entering the market. They have no collective memory about past transgressions from gaming companies, so, like, they could be taken advantage of with new releases and shit. Are we going to get to a point where these brand new community members are going to remember that swatting is fucked? Are we somehow going to have a system as a community of gamers so that they're informed that you do not fucking do this, because 2 kids will lose their dad again? How on earth does that even happen?
I doubt it, because if you look at the internet communities that already exist and have existed for more than, let's say, 10 years at this point, so since the early 2000s, most of them have been through probably 3 separate sets of users. I mean, Reddit is the biggest and the one that probably has the most collective memory. But, like, give it another 5 years and, maybe the Boston bombing ridiculously, that fiasco will already
explain
be out
that a
of
little
their
bit
memo.
for our listeners who weren't part of Reddit when that shit went down.
Yeah. So, I mean, I wasn't, but basically the police put out a photo of somebody they thought was or I guess it actually was one of the people that were participated in the bombing of the Boston Marathon in 2012, I think it was, and it might have been 2013. And then people on Reddit went and looked at the photo and thought they found the guy who that was, and it turns out it wasn't that person.
And they harassed him, and they
Yeah.
sent him death threats, and they tore him up on Facebook. They demonized this guy as a bomber totally incorrectly.
Well, that witch
people are
hunt
gonna
kind of
forget.
thing.
They're going to forget.
Right.
What's that? I'm
Witch
sorry.
hunts are just part of like human nature.
Yeah.
It's they didn't just start with witches, like they were going on way before that. It's just like that type of thing. I don't think can be avoided when there's instantaneous methods of communication
And I get-
with vast numbers of people like there are
Yeah.
now. But it's like you were saying on Reddit. If you're on Reddit, which is a great I don't want to call it like a social networking
Well,
site,
what's
but
Reddit if you've never been on it?
Reddit's just, I guess it's a social networking site.
Well,
There's no other
it's
way to
like
describe
a content aggregator,
Yeah,
right?
it is like a content aggregator with certain subgenres that range from broad to extremely specific. Ones like movies to movie details to individual sport teams. I mean, it's just a never ending like source of knowledge and community. But one thing I do love about it is I've multiple times like come across a meme that I like or some sort of content, and I just ask for context. I just type in context with a question mark, and I usually get links to multiple sources.
So it's basically a site where you can post a website link or an image or a statement.
GIF.
Yeah, and people can view it, and then there's a comment section where people comment on that thing. And they can upvote or downvote each comment. They can upvote and downvote the content, and based on that, it is ranked on the front page. And there's there's an algorithm, so older stuff eventually drops off the front page, so there's always new content. But it's a pretty interesting forum to share ideas and information, and it's got millions and millions and millions of users now. But the event that we're talking about was this community, which likes to view itself as pretty fucking smart, went on a fucking witch hunt on somebody who was not guilty of anything. And it's interesting, and this, I'm sort of afraid of that when it comes to combating swatting. But, talking to Frank and asking him the question, do we think the gaming community will have the collective memory to resist swatting in the future? I feel like it would be easy for me to say no. I really hope yes. But unless we're going into those NSA data banks in Utah and we're looking at all communications, we can figure out who said what. I sort of think it's something that's here to stay. I mean, are we going to have anti-swatting campaigns like we have with bullying? I mean, they've been anti-bullying for years, and it's still around.
Right.
You're ultimately
It's
trying
still
to combat,
MASH.
You're ultimately just trying to combat. I think an expression of one of the poorer facets of human nature.
Yeah, there's still mass
I do
shootings.
And
think
that
that-
is the capacity to
So
fuck
these
with each
people
other.
probably boast to their friends about how they swatted, and but I think that if people are getting killed, I do think that the friends would turn them in eventually.
I mean, sure, they'll get turned in, but I don't think that would.
Mhm.
I mean, we're talking about Utes,
Yeah.
youths with no sense of long-term consequence. That's why kids don't go to jail, right? Because their brains don't understand,
Yeah.
right?
Except they do, and the United States is one of the only countries in the world that will execute minors.
Okay. For the most part, then.
Yeah, you have a terrible lawyer. Maybe.
For the most part, then, Frank. I mean, I remember being young, and you think you don't think it's going to happen to you. So even if it does happen to other people, you see people go to jail. I don't think you're going to
But you don't see like 13-year-olds just randomly like lighting concert buildings on fire. You know what I mean? Like that there is some level where they understand the consequences. They will kind of back off. Like they do really stupid stuff, but they're not like malicious.
I guess.
on purpose,
I
routine.
mean, I guess if you put it out there that if you do this, then you will be caught,
Right.
Yeah.
right? But people who pull the fire alarm get caught. They still fucking do it. I guess you're not killing anybody, but
And there's
Well, that's what I'm
plenty.
saying. I think people think it's like pulling the fire alarm or speeding really fast when actually it's like causing.
all right, hold on.
harm.
I think Lisa wanted to go, and then
Okay.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, kind of to your point, Kyle, it's, like something's much different than like burning down a building. Like you see that there's consequences and that's bad, where, swatting someone, that's something over the internet, and things over the internet, it's really easy for people to distance themselves from any sort of consequences that your actions are going to cause.
Right.
So, the idea of, oh, I swatted someone, ha ha ha, like they're not seeing what's happening. They don't understand, the financial consequences of calling a SWAT team to someone's house. They don't understand that, you're fucking with people in ways that you shouldn't be fucking with people. So it's probably easy for these 13-year-olds to just think it's this funny thing to do, like prank calling, which is a fun thing to do.
Yeah.
Swatting is not a fun thing to do. Don't swat.
Well, what a 13-year-old knows is wrong and isn't wrong is like unfathomable. We can't put a limit on that. 13-year-olds are just like completely different, as well as like being completely different, not being 13-year-olds anymore, and it being a relatively long time since we have been. It's hard to think of that
13
headspace.
years.
But there are 13-year-olds who are selling drugs, and they're not like selling pot. Like they're standing on the corner in West Baltimore with like a pocket full of crack vials and a gun.
I'm not drawing the conclusion. I think I need you to explain a little more what you're trying to say.
Well, what I'm saying is they know that what they're doing is wrong too. Do you
Some of them.
understand?
I think they
like
might
the
know
same,
it's illegal.
yeah, exactly. Well, that's exactly my point. They know that what they're doing is illegal, just like those kids who are swatting. I don't think they understand like the consequences of what it means to be selling your neighbor's crack. They don't understand like the consequences. Like, you know, someone from another gang is essentially the same as like this person on the other side of the internet.
Right.
They're not a real person to them.
Yeah, okay.
He's like, oh, it's just this fucking Twitch streamer. Like, watch what I'm going to do to this guy.
Well, let's also not forget that I think especially in the gaming community, there's a lot of, especially in the younger side of it, a lot of kids out there who they probably at some level want attention, because they don't get it, whether it be from their family members or their peers or whatever, and they'll just do stupid shit to act out to get people to pay attention to them. And they know that it's wrong. They might know, like, yeah, this is bad, but they want to just do something. And somebody telling them that this is, like, the worse you tell them that it is, the more they want to do it, because the more attention they will
Don't
get.
you dare do this bad thing, or a lot of people will say that it's bad.
Yeah,
Just
right.
continue to be lonely and behave.
Right.
Yeah. You know, I had a thought the other day, to Lisa's point, about how it seems like it's, you know, it's a million miles away. It's not like pulling the fire alarm, because then you see people exit the building, right? Like the war in Iraq and the war in Afghanistan and the Syrian conflict and the Libyan action, like this shit could be totally fake. Everybody could just be telling me that this is going on, and it could be not, and I could be sitting here believing it. Like, I will never be in Iraq or Libya or Syria. I will never see firsthand the consequences of what's going on over there or the actions taken.
And you probably won't have any interaction with somebody who has firsthand experience of those events.
I mean, exactly, and even that would be tangential. You know what I mean? Even that would be somebody telling me what's going on, and I can, like, it was just, it was a bizarre place to find myself, where I'm like, you know, I believe this because it makes sense, right? But I'm sitting here, and this is the difference, I think. This thing that I will never, ever, ever know more about than what people have told me, I still feel a weight on my conscience of the actions of my countrymen, right? I understand that there are consequences, and I'm a participant in a system that furthers actions that affect other people that I will never meet, I will never see, and it will never affect me beyond knowing about it. And that is such an abstract concept. I can see how other people wouldn't understand it, but what the thing that I don't get is how somebody can sit down and say, sending a SWAT team to somebody's house could get them killed. Oh, well. And that person probably has a family. Oh, well.
Well, they probably don't realize that someone can get killed
13.
from it.
14, 15, 16-year-olds.
They're playing games where they're shooting people as SWAT officers. That's what happens. You point guns at people, people end up getting shot.
They don't understand. They're still like forming what is, and like 13 years old, you don't know how to actually converse with somebody.
Nah.
Like, you walk up to them and you're like, I like these things. Oh, you like these things? I like those things.
These aren't toddlers, man. Like,
No, they're not, dude. But go back to like when you were 13 years old.
I'd rather not.
Yeah, exactly. You know why?
It was
Because you
the
were like
worst.
yeah.
Well, I mean, do you guys remember? I don't know how you guys felt, but like, I remember I could have skipped the first level writing class at college, right? It was like writing 120. I had the AP score to skip it, and I decided, you know what? At the time, I was a music major. I'd rather take the class with an easy A than skip it and go to something more difficult.
Yeah.
Which I think a lot of people out there did the same thing. And then I ended up in this basic level writing class, right? And I mean, it's not like basic level writing, but it's like the intro writing class at college, and you have to like the first paper thing that you have to do, you have to like peer review other people's papers, and I'm sitting there like reading what kids that got into and are going to college are writing down at 18 years old, and I'm just like,
There are
what?
a lot of really stupid fucking people out there.
And
I was
these are the
saying
ones
it
that
earlier,
went
dude.
to
It's
college.
bad, dude.
Yeah.
It's
And I'm
really
like,
bad.
There are at
especially
least
at
3
Westchester.
billion people. There are at least 3 billion people way stupider than all of us.
Yeah.
And they're all over the fucking world.
and
They're driving cars.
And
they're
voting.
fucking
And they're voting.
They're voting.
like I remember reading
Roy Moore got what, like fucking like 48%? 46%?
Yeah,
Like
and he tried to like appeal it and recount and do this.
dude,
that,
and
that.
like
He's a kitty diddler. Get the fuck
no,
out of here! Get the fuck
hey,
out of
hey,
here!
Yeah.
alleged.
Get the fuck out of here, kitty! Get
Alleged.
Yeah, alleged.
Alleged.
your kitty diddle fingers out of here!
I mean my point is that
Cut him off.
that's 18-year-olds, and if you bump that back to 5 years to 13-year-olds, it gets even worse. And what we think of as what someone should be capable of at 13 years old, and what many 13-year-olds are capable of. And for everyone, like when you read, like, okay, what should a 13-year-old be? Oh, they should be able to write in complete sentences. You know, like there are plenty that can, and there are plenty that can go well beyond that. There are also plenty that can't.
Yeah, but 13-year-olds are also so stupid that they hang out with Roy Moore. So like
Burn.
Wow.
Screw
Burn.
you.
Victim
young
shaming.
teens. Middle schoolers. Fuck you.
Mom.
Boo.
Although, like, I like how Roy Moore is like just obviously not going to get elected to anything, but I'm pretty sure Bernard Law's still alive. I'm pretty sure that fucking asshole's still like sitting pretty in Rome in a nice big gilded room after moving around a bunch of child molesters.
Yep.
Yeah.
Whole other topic.
But
But to kind of, I kind of want to wind it back because when it comes to this whole swatting thing, we've spoken a lot about the societal half of it and the finding people who do it, holding accountability, punitive measures. But when it comes to the fact that this guy was killed, and we weren't there, I don't think there was a body cam, which stipulation number one for a successful future at all dealing with police, mandatory body cameras, and being accountable when they're malfunctioning. But besides that, we don't know exactly what happened, but I have a feeling that this father of two who was unarmed wasn't looking for a fist fight. Right? Wasn't looking for a knife fight, probably didn't go for a gun, gonna go ahead and make that guess, and he still wound up dead. And when it comes to swatting, I think when it comes, as far as Twitch is concerned, it's been, I think you elucidated it pretty well. Like it happens a lot. It's prevalent. Like these kids expect it half the time. They know to put their hands up, all that good stuff. But it's not a new thing in and of itself, because I give you, John Crawford at a Walmart in Ohio who was fucking with a BB gun in the toy section out of its package, and another person frequenting this place, a white man, Mr. Crawford's black, of course. One of the major cases behind the Black Lives Matter movement, at the risk of getting extremely political. White fella calls the cops, says that Mr. Crawford is menacing people and firing in the store. Right? I've listened to the call. He made it sound, without saying in so many words, that it was like a real firearm. He was actually threatening people. And these officers, now it wasn't a full-on SWAT raid. I only saw 2 on the security footage. But these 2 cops come in like pretty full kit with ARs, and they wind up in the toy section. There's a camera on Mr. Crawford. He just has it's like a Daisy air rifle, right?
Yeah.
That someone else took out of the package and he found. And he was walking around with it in the store. Or he's probably gonna buy the thing maybe, or whatever. Or he just has it swinging it by his hip, his left hip. And then there's no audio to the camera, but the cops swing around the corner, muzzle already up, probably issue some kind of command.
drop him.
And Mr. Crawford, looks, sees the guy's running at him. The cop is running at him, muzzle in his, at him, right? Running at him. He puts the rifle down, turns his back to run away because he's like, fuck, and gets shot in the back and killed.
There is, and I've watched the same video, and I saw the
caller. Sorry, before you go on, the caller about a year and a half later, the guy who placed the call to call the cops in, is going to trial. I haven't kept up with it, but he is. These laws are being exercised, the ones you mentioned before.
So is it significant that the caller was white because it's implying racism on the caller's part? The police would have no way to know that.
I don't see any evidence to that point. I think the reason why it got picked up by Black Lives Matter is one. Well, of course, the cops were white. The shootee was black, and the assertion, as I understand it, is that if it were a white customer in Walmart, maybe they would have been less quick on the trigger.
Well, maybe.
So all that much is a maybe. What's clear is that it was a bad fucking shoot.
Yeah.
On top of an erroneous call.
And what I'm saying, and as I was starting to say, I watched the call. I saw the reach that people thought, that was the scary reach or whatever. But I watched a video of some guy. Police called in. I can't remember his name, and I'm sorry. It's some guy. He came out of a grocery store. The police were called because they said somebody was waving a gun around. Oh, it was a 7-Eleven or convenience store. Said he was waving a gun around in a convenience store. He comes outside. He's got his headphones in. The police accost him with their guns out. He turns around and goes to pull his hands out of the front pockets of his sweatshirt. And then as his sweatshirt comes up, they shoot him and kill him. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? And it was at that point that I came to the conclusion that both those videos, I have accumulated this opinion that if I'm ever in a situation where law enforcement thinks that they might have to shoot me, I think I'm probably going to get shot. I'm gonna fuck it up. I'm gonna get nervous, and I'm gonna do something that's gonna get me killed.
The guy in Vegas just a week or two ago, or whatever, who was, you mentioned him earlier. I think he was fucking drunk, right? And he got killed in the hallway while trying to comply with commands.
Oh, right.
You watch that video. He was doing his fucking best, right? But the commands were contradictory. The guy's hands were fucking open. He still got shot. So to kind of bring it back to the point here is that I think a big way to make if swatting, if we're just gonna have to live with it in some shape or form, right? I think an important angle to attack it from, in addition to the reasons that already exist prior to this this whole gamer Twitch swatting fiasco finally reaching a head. It would address that and so many other existing issues if something were done about the trigger-happy police force.
Yeah,
that's not to say it's the whole force, but it's too much.
The thing that I pulled away from that hallway shooting in Vegas, this guy was clearly wasted. I mean,
how to handle
he's in Vegas.
Well, the officer goes, "Are you drunk, sir?" And the guy's like, "No." I guess you shouldn't lie to the police when you're wasted. Who fucking doesn't lie to the police when they're wasted? So you should be able to comply just fine. And then they have him cross his legs and crawl forward, and his pants fall down. And he reaches to pull up his pants, and they kill him. And
in what book are any of those commands fucking procedural?
It was just
Simon
it was
Says
so bizarre. It was so bizarre to be like, so there's no reason you shouldn't be able to comply, young man. I mean, on paper, if you wrote that down, it would sound like the guy was like, yeah, I'm totally fine. You'd be like, why did he reach for his waist? But you listen to the videos, he sounds like a fucking mess. Mm-hmm. He was like a 0.28 in some parts of his body and a 0.26 in other parts. That is fucking wasted. Mm-hmm. And I understand. My issue is that I have law enforcement in my family. A lot of my friends are law enforcement. And I appreciate a lot of the work that they do. And it's tough to reconcile this idea that, these people, they want to go home at night too. And if you've watched videos of the police getting shot, the amount of time that it takes to go from totally benign to getting shot nearly to death is 1 second, 2 seconds. Mm-hmm. And I think at initial face value, it's kind of hard to reconcile. I remember watching. There was a video. This guy approached somebody. A caller called in, a guy acting suspiciously, and he had his hand in his sweatshirt. And the policeman approached him from the right side, and the guy already had his hand on the gun in his coat. Sorry, it wasn't a sweatshirt; it was a coat. And then the cop got close, and the guy just pulled out the gun and shot him 3 times. Bang, bang, bang. And then you listen to the call. He's radioing back in, tell my family I love them. I've been shot, this, that, and the other thing. And it's hard for me, and I guess maybe I'm the something of the group. There are humans on both sides. So how do you, with deference to this idea that everybody wants to live, how do you assign a set of rules where, everybody gets to go home, but when the bad guys are a real threat, they're still dealt with? I don't know. I don't know the answer.
Well, I feel like there's so many issues that we could discuss. And, one of them, like you talked about, the police are a little too eager to pull the trigger when they've basically signed up for a job where they need to be a little bit more willing to risk getting hurt or killed. That's the job they signed up for. They need to risk getting killed
100%.
And hold back, even though they might get shot by some guy, just
That's
to
where
make
the whole
certain.
premise that these people are brave comes
Protect,
from.
right, serve.
And I don't want to say, I don't want to cast judgment on anybody.
Sure.
Can't cast any aspersions on people who are, out there taking risks because, they're taking.
I will.
Hold on. They're taking risks as it is, but I think the only solution that I see is that, aside from people not committing crimes,
Good luck.
is that the people who are in the position to enact this lethal force accept a higher level of risk.
And responsibility.
Responsibility is the key word here. And you're 100% right, man. You don't become a cop if you don't have a little thirst for power, some sort of cop or law enforcement. I don't think that like it's not 1960 anymore. You're not protecting your little town. Ever since it all changed in 1992. With
I'm not getting behind whatever you're saying.
The LA.
Just gonna say that.
That's
right
fine. With the LA shootout, the North Hollywood shootout, when those guys were robbing a bank and they came out of a bank with assault
armor and
with AK-47s and full on body armor, and these cops couldn't take them down. Cops were getting gunned down like it's modern warfare. It was crazy. It had never happened before, so everything had to change.
That shooting is why officers now carry rifles.
Rifles in the car.
In their trunks.
I got busted in a dorm room when I was 19 years old with alcohol. I got put into a back of a police car, and there was an AR-15 in there. And I'm sitting there why am I this close to that? I had never been that close to a rifle before, and all I did was have a drink. Why is that? It has completely changed the world that we live in. People, I don't think there was drug dealing the way that there was in the 90s and the 80s.
Dude, the 90s and the 80s were some of the worst.
Yeah,
people
it's
were
not
getting
like the
gunned
70s.
down in cafes.
That's what I'm saying. It didn't start like that until the 80s and the 90s.
Right.
Then it really did get crazy, and I understand the cops
Pablo Escobar
need.
had a lot to do with that.
Yeah, and I understand. They want to wear body armor. Mm-hmm. I understand that they want to have tactical training with their guns.
Yeah, do it. Do it all, please.
But guess what? When you shoot an unarmed civilian, you don't get a gun anymore.
Dude, you know what? And that's the fucking thing.
Yeah. People don't want to hear it, but guess what? They accepted responsibility to protect and serve, and they failed. They failed to protect and serve that unarmed person.
Unarmed shit.
I want to agree, but I want to change. I want to
Go right ahead.
I want to nip you in the bud, Bill, because you're getting triggered. And I want to change.
I didn't want to trigger. I could tell I was
That's
starting
half
to
the
trigger.
fun of this show is getting this boy going.
I could tell I triggered him, and I didn't want to.
But I think I can diffuse it, and that the stipulation is not that someone's unarmed, because Michael Brown was unarmed.
Yeah.
But he went for the gun.
He
According to the
attacked.
official record.
Yeah, that's the same.
The fact that they're unarmed does not mean they're no longer a threat.
Yes.
Right. So a change in language can make that point much more salient.
You're right.
Right. And it's true that look at the case of Alton Sterling. Okay. Man had his license to carry. Man was armed, and he was complying with cops, and wound up dead anyway. Right.
Yeah.
Because the cop got spooked for the camera didn't start rolling until after he was shot, so we don't know. But there's only testimony. But the man was doing everything right, and still got killed. And it's the impulses that led to that happening on that cop's behalf that I think are pretty well representative of the issue that we're talking about. Not Obviously not representative of law enforcement at large,
Yeah.
necessarily.
Well-
But representative of the issue with it that gets cops into such a high-profile place and not, in a lot of people's opinion, enough punitive fucking trouble.
And it is an issue. Hold on. And it is an issue that is like, it does not permeate. It's not that every officer is susceptible to
close.
this issue,
Not even close.
but it is that there is some sort of systemic problem with inner city police officers committing these. I don't want to call them accidents because
Killing people who shouldn't have been shot.
exactly.
Right.
So
I mean,
I feel like the police. No, go ahead. We both started at the same time. Yeah, I feel like the police kind of have the wrong philosophy. I mean, the police units still sort of had this like Wild West. We're going to be the first
it
ones
is
to
the
draw.
Wild West.
It's not.
Right.
It is the Wild West.
Wild
the
West
whole
didn't have
world is the Wild
Wi-Fi.
West.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. And
we're all on Facebook, bro. That's not the Wild
Oh,
West.
fuck off. The thing that we were saying earlier, like, part of the thing that I love about America so much is that somebody who looks like me and is as scary as me could approach somebody like Lisa in a fucking alleyway and try to force her to get into a car or beat her to death or try to assault her. And guess what she can do? Turn around and put 3 in my belly, and then I'm fucking dead. All right? Well, I was unarmed, but guess what? I'm 3 times her size, and I am a fucking serious threat.
Yeah.
Yes. So that's why this whole like unarmed rhetoric makes my head explode. But and I'm not gonna cast judgments on everybody who's in the police has a desire to be a tough guy and a bully and they like their power. Blah blah blah. I'm not gonna do that. What I will acknowledge objectively is that there are more bad shoots than we want. We want none. I don't want people being shot at all. Right? Sometimes it has to happen. But I don't know how we've quite wandered down this political path since
It's probably my fault.
we're a gaming channel, but I guess it's relevant to this specific question in that a guy answering his door in his own
home,
in his family home was killed for reaching for his waistband. And
which I can understand because
my original question is, how do you combat that? And there's 2 ways. 3 ways. Nobody swats anymore. Not going to happen. Nobody reaches for their waistband anymore. That's not going to fucking happen. Or the people empowered to end life in defense of another wait another half a second.
Tell you what. If we want to go down the NWO route and get those barcodes on our wrists or our necks or something, hey, then maybe I won't have to reach for my idiot ID to give to the cop that's in my pocket next to my waistband and get shot for it.
that's that's a great point.
I'm sorry,
Valid.
reaching for a waistband is not sufficient reason to shoot somebody.
No.
Right. I agree. Yeah,
you
it can't
can't
be.
use that as a benchmark because everyone has a fucking
And
waistband
again, it's
and pockets.
and the reason that is like a thing that makes officers scared is because they're scared for their lives, which I understand. But if you're scared enough to like pull the trigger in that situation, maybe you shouldn't have been a cop.
If your gun's already drawn on me,
And I don't have a
I
gun.
will not, even if I have a gun, I will not be able to hit you accurately before you put 3 in me.
Right.
Then
It
you
won't
should.
happen.
I
If your
mean,
gun's already
unless you
on
blow
me-
the chute. Unless you, as the guy with the gun drawn, blow the chute.
Then don't. Then you. How can you be a cop if
Okay.
you're like within 15?
Let's abolish police and abolish social interaction and just live in bubbles then at that point.
Well, no,
I
but-
don't own a gun or
I'm not
shoot
defending you
guns.
personally, Bill, but it's just like what if this? What if he has an AR-15 up his ass? What if he has a nuke in his trunk? Like I don't know.
Snook.
Then I guess you got your ass blown up,
Right.
didn't you?
Yeah,
And you had no way of knowing, and no one else did either.
dude. If you
Like,
have.
okay, that's gonna happen if you're gonna be in a line of work where criminals who might be violent exist, and if you have to approach people not knowing necessarily if they're even a criminal in the group, or they're going to be violent if they are one, right? You have signed up for this role, and there needs to be some kind of tweak in the rationale. Like I said, you want to approach me with your gun drawn, fine, but don't ask me for my ID, which is in my wallet. Let me take it out, and then gun me down. Alton Sterling.
I honestly think that
Don't do it.
I think that the solution may be even more procedural. Just have the situations handled in such a way that officers are not put in a place where they're fearful, because we already know the civilians are going to be afraid. You know what I mean? Like, I've talked to I call the police for a number of different reasons, but even when I'm interacting with them, I'm like hyper aware of where my hands are. Honestly, if I get pulled over and instead of somebody watching my hands and worrying that I'm going to reach for something, like, you know, my hand on my gear shifter, instead of worrying I'm going to reach for my waistband, I'd rather you just put handcuffs on me and talk to me then. Now, I don't think it's cool to be treated like a criminal all the time, but I'd rather be alive than dead.
Well, I'm sorry, I'm going to cut him real quick. Here's the thing. Another thing that you just kind of made me think of with that, and it's, you know, it's a meme floating around somewhere, but why is it that we have to worry so much about these brave officers being scared at the drop of a hat or the drop of a waistband?
Right.
When we as civilians need to be completely cool and rational when we might be intoxicated, we have no training of any sort necessarily. And like, other than we might get shot if we cross the cops, if we get on the cops' bad side, like,
are these police calling themselves brave?
The
There's an identity.
perception.
Yeah, this
Right.
And they do it.
So-
They should
so-
do the job. I
So
feel like.
what I mean to do, Bill, is actually agree with you in having some type of procedural change, not necessarily to remove the fear. Right? I want people to be held accountable for their fucking actions, whether they wear a badge or not. Right? So, and I don't want special treatment either way. Okay? If anything, if you wear a badge, you need to be held to a higher standard. And that standard has to be backed up by equivalent training, which it currently isn't.
100%.
Perception seems to think it's there. And there's people who've, every single one of these bad shoots that we've seen has had a litany of defenders. Right? Pro-police, generally anti-BLM, not to bring them up again. I'm not particularly affiliated or anything, for the record. But I agree with a lot of the case studies they present because they're fucking right most of the time. Because there are people who defend these cats seemingly because they wear a badge, you know, that's all bark. I need to see and bite. I need to see some tags with that dog, dude, or it ain't gonna hunt.
Yes.
There's 330 million people in this country. There's always going to be somebody supporting whoever, you know what I mean? So like the statement that like, you know, there's people supporting even the biggest like serial killers out there. Of course, I mean, there's always support for something, and I don't
That's
mean
just a reductio ad absurdum, dude.
Yeah.
I mean, I wasn't quite done my sentence, but that's what I don't think in and of itself saying that there's support is necessarily a strong argument. I'm trying to understand what exact assertion you're making by saying that there's people supporting them. Like, there's always going to be people supporting anybody, but what are you trying to tell me, that there's an alarming number? That there's always going to be a non-zero number, but
I do think that the number's alarming. I don't have a figure for you to justify that alarm, but I think the more important thing here is that there is a bias towards law enforcement in a particularly Republican sector of the population, who to varying degrees may believe things like racism is dead, silly, or cops can do no wrong, silly, or and I don't mean to make a bunch of different straw men nor to put you in a position to defend them, because that's not all I'm getting at. My point is that, you know, there's so much resistance to the idea that even these demonstrably bad shoots were bad.
Right.
yeah, and my point is, I wonder. I guess this is my own naivete. I just don't. I have not encountered a person in real life who resists these assertions. But then again, I live close to a city, and you know,
Well, how often do you really have this kind of conversation with random?
more
Yeah.
often than you would think, because software developers, that's all we do is sit around on our asses, our giant flabby asses, and talk.
I mean,
You know?
in my job answering phones, it's mostly like dodge and deflect these kinds of topics.
Oh, yeah.
It's like,
Oh, yeah.
that's crazy. what's
I'm
going
here
on.
with my-
How can I
And
help
you know,
today?
you and I
Yeah.
have had late night, in-depth conversations about the way that the situation goes, and I think that my big issue, the way that I come across, is that I'm defending any particular position. I think that we end up, from the powers that be, having the wrong conversations. You know, we can talk all we want about how could anybody support, and I'm not saying you're saying this, but from my position, how can anybody support X position, or Y position? X position's an actual word. That's not what I was trying to say. But I think the bigger issue isn't, popular support isn't necessarily a measure of the success of anything in the United States. Popular support was there for net neutrality. Popular support is there for the removal of marijuana. Popular support is marijuana illegality at the federal level.
Prohibition.
So, yes, thank you.
And
popular support is there for a number of different things, and we can say that those people are the problem, and I don't believe it, because I think there's a fundamental disconnect from the heads of the organizations that actually have the power, and that's why I end up so probably inappropriately resistant to some of the conversations that I have over and over again. I think it's in the interest of the status quo to have conversations that are framed in a way that everybody frames them. And what I'm ultimately trying to say is there is a solution out there. Everybody's entitled to be angry, I mean, I'm not happy. I'm fearful of the consequences of a situation that I had nothing to do with. I am upset that there are people who are more disposed to those consequences than me for reasons that are totally out of their power. I don't like it either. But maybe it's the I'm not even gonna. I don't know. Maybe it's something in my personality, but I don't like spending time getting super upset about it. I just want to know what is the solution, and the only solution in front of me seems to be creating a culture where the people who are shooting other people are more willing to take the risk that they're going to get shot so that they don't pull the trigger so early. I think that we can recognize that training, however espoused it is from the politicians, is horribly lacking. I mean, look at the cuts to the funding for our emergency services. It's unbelievable. Where do they cut from first? First responders in fucking schools.
Yeah.
And then we can sit around and we can say, well, people are so dumb. Well, we don't fund education. Well, we're not.
Well, I don't have kids. Why should I pay for it?
We're
Because
not-
you're going to live with them when they graduate.
We're not.
That's why.
We're not.
Yeah.
We're not paying. We're not paying to empower our. We're not paying to empower the people that we're also criticizing. And I'm not saying it's any individual's fault. I think that we have. I fundamentally believe that we have a systemic problem, and the thing that tears me up. The solution to swatting, the solution to bad shoots is so much bigger than any individual's personal ire. I hate the feeling of getting caught up in a conversation where I feel like, I'm not saying anybody did this to me, I often feel like I'm defending a position that I didn't mean to take. It's not the hill I want to die on.
I've been caught in that trap.
It's just
Especially
that
on
happens,
Facebook.
and
It's
I
hard
don't
to find
think
a hill you
I don't
wanna
think
die
that
on.
happened to you at all. What I think the issue with it is that there is a tremendous amount of power that is given to police officers, and they are just regular people. They're not.
Yes.
They're not. And maybe when I said it earlier, I do think because the thing is, I didn't become a cop, and I do have a fantasy whenever I see someone break a traffic law of pulling them over and how good that would feel. That would feel fucking great. And I know that if you're a cop and you pull over some bitch in a Mercedes who just blew a fucking red light in a school zone or passed somebody on the shoulder in a school zone, that's got to be you got to have a fucking raging hard on after that, dude. Oh my God, this fucking cunt who can afford to pay. I'm going to hit her with everything I can possibly hit her with. Fuck this. This lady put children's lives, that probably is awesome. I can't imagine.
I could even get behind that.
Yeah, I can't imagine.
Fuck that bitch.
That's a great reason to become a cop. It's I did this thing that kept people safe, and it feels good because I had
Protect
this
and
power
serve.
over somebody. Yeah, protect and serve. And the thing is, I get to go out there and correct everybody, from fucking the CEO of Comcast to a guy who works for his dad's electrical business. I get to correct all of them when they're putting other people in danger. The fact is, because I get to do that, I have to wait a half a second to make sure I don't shoot some 13-year-old with a cap gun.
So I've had this thought. we in casual conversation have talked about like the militarization of police. Here, listen to my solution. We give the cops like level 4 body armor that can withstand an AK-47 or whatever. We have them all operate in pairs, right? And instead of giving them pensions after 25 years, we get rid of that. So you're not worried about making it all the way to 55.
Right.
You just triple their pay.
Yeah.
You
pay 'em
triple
now.
it right now. And we say, if you fuck up and have a single bad shoot, you're fucking done. You're losing $180,000 a year.
You're a security guard at the Exton Mall.
But if
Like-
if you do your job right, you are making fucking bank. That was my driving over to the podcast solution. I thought to that thing instead of
Let the free market handle it. Let the free market handle it.
I mean, I don't know much about that, but like there are mercenaries, and the thing is, mercenaries know that any given time,
I know one.
They get their arm blown off. It's
it's game over. But
Right.
they get paid a shitload of money.
He makes
so.
yeah.
And my question
Insane.
is, how do you get people? How do you change the mentality to get a more risk? What's the opposite of risk averse? Risk tolerant.
Yeah.
How do you get a more risk tolerant individual? Maybe you just pay more up front.
Maybe
Yeah.
you
That's a great idea.
Maybe you recruit better. I mean, there
Yeah,
are
I think
lots
that's-
of rumors
But
about.
you would have
recruiting.
to. I think you would have to change.
You have to change a lot. I mean, it's not
I think
as
you have to
simple as
change
making it
what
sound.
you're offering to recruit differently. Was my assertion.
Yeah, no, actually, honestly, Bill, I'm with you 100% on everything you just said.
Yeah. Well, actually, one thing that's interesting is so the Germans solved this problem by their like initial responders, their cops who first show up, don't even have guns, right? And in some ways that's kind of stupid. In some ways it's kind of brilliant.
It wouldn't
because
work here.
Yeah, I don't want
But
that.
North Hollywood shootout.
Here's what gets interesting about that is that at some level, a lot of times when cops get killed, the reason they get shot is because they show up to a scene, the burglar or criminal or person then says, "Oh my gosh, this guy has a gun. He could detain me. I need to pull my gun." And then all of a sudden, this scenario happens lightning quick, and the cop gets killed. Whereas if they're just like, "Hey, this idiot doesn't have a gun. I could just turn and like jog away. I'm not going to get shot in the back." Then they don't need to pull the gun and shoot the cop. You know what I mean? So it ends up having less cops shot, and the police who do show up, who do have guns, like they have like tons of SWAT team guys who basically do have guns, and those guys like all they do is practice for showing up and shooting people between the eyes who like are bad guys.
You've spent
you know?
way too much time in California, dude.
No, I mean I'm
Got
very
some San
conservative.
Francisco talk.
I'm just saying
You're
that
talking to a guy who wants more civilians to be armed, so that everybody has guns when something goes sideways.
that's what I want. I want that as well. It scares me when I just feel as though sometimes you have guys with guns showing up when you should have like a therapist, a mental health specialist.
Well,
showing
and
up.
that's
You know what I mean?
that is an
Yeah.
even bigger thing. We're talking about mental health in the United States or whatever. But I have been a person who has needed the police.
Yeah.
I've been a person who has needed the police, and if they hadn't showed up, I would be dead.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, that's the end of it.
Dude, you're coming from a totally different perspective than probably anyone else in this room.
And my ultimate point is saying that if these guys, if the police didn't have guns, there would have been no reason for these guys to stop assaulting me. You know what I
Right,
mean?
right.
They were humongous, right? So I like the idea that when Joe Blow local policeman shows up, they're like, I better get the fuck out of here. You know what I mean? But I guess that shows my own personal bias,
Right.
in the empowerment of every officer. But well, whatever. We already know I'm pro gun as shit.
Yeah. Well, oddly, I'm super pro gun. I like the idea of people who are capable of carrying a gun. I'm just saying that it seems as though there's been repeated issues with these bad shootings, and you just wonder, like, it's super hard to train thousands and thousands of people how to properly use a gun, to
Oh
test
my
to make
God.
sure that they're not
How to make those judgments.
how to make those
Oh,
judgments.
it's
That's
so
not for everyone.
hard. It's
That's
so
not for everyone.
hard.
It's like getting an NFL quarterback. You know what I mean?
I'm sorry.
Like,
I'm not making that sound at you. That's what I think
No,
of
that's-
when I see politicians like, we couldn't come up with a solution. It's so hard to be a senator. It's so hard. We literally pay you to solve the hard problems, you fucking douchebag.
Well, think of
solve the
this.
problem.
So-
So in
for work.
the NFL pays quarterbacks millions of dollars, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you could find hundreds upon hundreds of people who can make excellent throws downfield. You can find about 4 to 8 that can do that while never throwing an interception. You know what I mean? It's super hard to not make a bad judgment call
With-
100% of the
Yeah,
time.
with 160
100
million people
yeah, right.
watching you.
Exactly.
when you
and
throw
to
it.
never make a mistake under pressure. And that's why Tom Brady is so rare.
I think we're at a place. Societally though that like there is so much upside to minimal input. It's not like you know. I've talked to golfers. A lot of people golf, and they're buying pro level gear. And
Right.
you know, I look at them and I think to myself, and I've said to a couple. Well, I don't say it often because I don't want to make them feel bad.
Right.
I say it to people who are thinking about buying pro level gear. I go, that equipment only makes a difference when you're as good as Tiger Woods.
Right.
Because everything else is perfect, and then you're just fine tuning. We are not there. We are not there systemically with anything. If we threw any level of training into our first responders, any sort of resources, our gains would be unreal.
Yeah.
Unreal.
That could still be. Our cops could still be carrying fucking 38s from the 1940s. And
That's
things
what
would
happened.
Would be mostly just fine.
I wouldn't give a shit if the cops were running around with AR-15s
Let 'em
across
have a
their
rifle
back.
in the trunk.
If
Right.
they're running
Right.
around with
Yeah.
they're running around with AR-15s on their back, I wouldn't give a shit if they were all trained in de-escalation techniques. You know what I mean? I mean, I've been a bouncer
How
with
to handle someone with epilepsy.
right. I've been a
Yeah.
bouncer
Yeah.
with people who I've watched them. Like I've never wanted to be in a fight. I don't want it. It's not good. And I've watched guys who go into a conversation and all they do is goad the other person into a reaction. Why? And this comes back to my assertion that there are some people who just don't understand long-term consequence. Like, you do realize that if you get into a fight with a customer at a bar and you knock them out, they could hit their head on the bar and be dead, and then you go to jail. Like, that's a thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm sorry. You were going to say something.
I forget.
All right.
okay.
It's like,
Ooh.
you know, I think we came to an interesting. Well, I think it was interesting because we persevered through a difference of opinions, and we ended up sort of understanding each other a little more in depth.
Absolutely.
I think we have a spectrum of opinions, but we all sort of agree that there is a solution, and it's hard, but
I think we've diagnosed some of the factors underlying the problem.
Yeah, I don't know
And agree
if
with
there actually is a solution. I think what happens is that human society is just like human beings. We're evolving slowly. The crazy thing is, like, right now, unlike every other form of evolution we've ever seen, it's rapidly expanding.
and it's going to continue to be that way as our technology explodes. I mean, we are empowered by this technology, and you know, we started the conversation talking about swatting and how do we fix it, and I wouldn't be surprised if we, like most other scary events, see a knee-jerk reaction that people think will solve the problem, but it won't. And what we sort of hammer down to here is there are a multitude of different issues that need to be addressed in order for this problem to be mitigated. I don't think it's going to go away ever. Honestly, I think it's always going to be a thing unless it becomes totally boring. But people still fucking call in bomb threats, for Christ's sake. You know, it's interesting because I'm now of the belief that it goes beyond just the gaming community finding a solution, but it's, you know, the country. We're
It's
all
everyone.
going to have to.
It's everyone.
We're all going to have to go sit down and say, enough is a fucking enough. What do we have to spend our money on? Who do we need to train? Who do we need to empower to have better solutions? And I think you mentioned if we figure out a way to solve the swatting problem, we might solve 10 other problems as well.
Yeah.
All right, I
we
think
take a
we're
break?
ready for another break.
Yeah.
Our second break, and then we'll come back and we'll actually talk about a fucking video game. I promise. All right. segment of our New Year's. We never even pointed out
didn't.
that it
It's
is
New
fucking New
Year's.
Year's Eve, and here we are.
Happy New Year.
Giving you product, baby.
2018, baby.
All two of our
It's our
listeners,
New Year's
Chris and my dad.
extravaganza.
Chris and my dad, our two listeners. Big shout out. When you weren't here, we reviewed our listens, and what's his name? Frank was like, "Yeah, the person who's listened to the most podcast, according to this list, is Chris." Because we all listen through the admin. You know what I mean? So.
So there, we have a listeners' appreciation day. It's called Father's Day.
I don't even know the name of the podcast I'm on.
It's Two Guns, No Ammunition.
No.
2 guns, no ammo, or no ammunition?
Well, the full name is No Ammunition, but we
Okay,
just say
alright.
Two Guns, No Ammo.
I'm with you, yeah.
So if you're looking to listen to us and you're not already listening to us now, you go to soundcloud.com /
Or if you are listening to this and you don't know what
Two guns no ammo. But in the next month, we are going to have a website put up because I'm learning how to make one.
Oh, lit.
And the website is going to be... You know what? I actually got really lucky because I tried to get Two Guns, No Ammo, and for whatever reason, I couldn't get it. TGNAplay.com.
Ooh.
Tell me that's not a hype-ass URL. TGNAplay.com.
I like
That's
ready.
us. I bought it. I just got to get a web host, and then we'll have email addresses. There's going to be, I think we talked about a number of email addresses. Two Guns at TGNAplay.com is going to be me. Maverick at TGNAplay.com is going to be Frank. I can't remember any other ones we said. It can be whatever we want. We'll have it.
I think I have 2 guns, no ammo at Gmail, but
Yeah. We have that right now.
that's our stand-in.
Yeah.
That's cool. They're gonna-
Basically, just fax us. And stuff.
Yeah, just stick
Still
with
need to get a fax.
stick
We
with
do
what
need a
you
fax.
know, audience, and just fax
Oh
us
my
as
god!
always.
I didn't fucking tell you, Genevieve. She's been gone almost as long as Kyle over here because he's studying for school. She had some classes. She works at I'll just say an office, and they have a fax machine, and they got, I shit you
Some
not,
apple juice.
a random paper that was fax machine clip art. And it said, go to this URL to unsubscribe from free fax clip art.
That's awesome.
Wow.
It was like a butterfly, a dwarf, a doggy.
You can
An
cut this
identity
out.
thief.
Yeah.
Oh my
All
God.
right.
Yeah, and I was like,
Yeah.
and she goes, what do I do?
A fishing scam.
And I said to her, I was like, don't put in your information. They're just trying to fish it, right? But she sent
Kinda
me a
brilliant,
picture
though.
later on in the day where she had colored it, the clip
Yeah,
art. She's like, I had so much fun. I hope they send another one.
Oh my god.
Wow.
Where does she work? Does she still work at the chiropractic place? Oh, okay. We're good.
She works at it as a chiropractic assistant,
Okay, cool. Yeah.
and they have a
guess-
fax machine there.
Yeah. I don't need to.
Of course they do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Fucking chiropractors.
So we are going. I promised you guys.
I like
I
chiropractors.
promised you guys we would come back to talking about video games specifically.
not chiropractors.
By golly, by gum, we're gonna fucking do it.
We're not
And
gonna
the
talk about
first game is
pseudosciences.
Chiropractor Simulator.
This game is a fraud
mirrors
and a
chiropractor.
pseudoscience.
You know, we.
Up, you snapped the baby's neck, idiot.
Hey. I don't think you know this, nerd, but a friend of the podcast, Carl, is
He
a
was on the
chiropractor.
show.
He's been on here. Okay, he's
Has
really.
My mom's a chiropractor too.
I know your mom's a
nuts.
My
chiropractor.
father's gonna be like, I'm not listening.
I
to you
know.
guys anymore.
Yeah, we're about to lose funding.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I don't know if I announced it to the general, everybody in this room before, and Frank came and went, and he missed it out. But my dad has offered to sponsor us one episode, and by that he means buy us 40s and sit in and listen. That'd be pretty cool. He's gonna be our first studio
Thanks,
audience.
Dad.
I'm so excited.
I feel like we should mic him up.
He
doesn't want to.
doesn't want that. He's gonna break us down afterwards, which
All
will be
right.
really constructive
I like
because
it.
he is not.
Is he gonna break down my character?
I hope so. I
Yeah,
hope
that's
like,
actually,
is he
it's
gonna
actually going to be an intervention.
Is he gonna make
for
me
you.
like question my existence? Am I in the correct dimension? Should I just kill myself later? Like, is that kind of?
No, I think he's going to
break
directly
me
criticize
down?
our work so that we become better. I don't.
Oh. I thought this was going to be
really
like
want him to examine you.
a boot camp, break you down, build you back up kind of thing.
All right, we're going to talk about Hotline Miami. I'm cutting away. So if you aren't familiar with Hotline Miami, it is a rather short, couple hours. I think you can beat it in. I've played it for an hour. If you were good, you could probably beat it in like an hour and a half. Like, oh shit, what was that free running game? Mirror's Edge. Mirror's Edge took me 8.5 hours to beat the first time. The second time I played through it, I beat it in an hour 20 minutes. So you're like, oh, but Two Guns. Nobody calls me Two Guns. I think myself, oh, but Bell, the world record is 1 hour and 25 minutes. There's no way you beat it in 80 minutes. Yeah, go fuck yourself. I beat it in some time under 2 hours. All right. But it's in that, I guess we call it 8-bit style, although clearly we're looking at a still shot of it. This isn't 8 bits. 8 bits is way less detailed. So it's, it's that like sort of
mid 90s, like has a Sega
yeah.
retro,
vintage chic,
like
retro,
right.
pseudo retro style. Basically, you're a killer, and what they do is you get phone calls, and they send you into buildings, and then you kill everybody in the room. And the game is shot from top down.
Classic early GTA style.
Early GTA style. The first, if you're unfamiliar, the first Grand Theft Auto was a top-down gameplay. So everything, you're like looking down on the top of people's heads. But this game is pretty neat. They give you different masks to wear, and the different masks give you different abilities.
Okay.
Like, if you wear the tiger mask, then when you punch somebody, it's lethal. It kills them. Whereas normally it would just knock them to the ground.
Okay, very Majora's Mask-like.
Yeah. But the big thing about this game is it's fucking brutal, right? So, like, you walk into a room and you swing a pipe at somebody and you break their head in half.
Yeah.
But if you miss, they turn around and they do the same thing. They just cave your skull in. All in low definition, don't get me wrong. But it's like there's just blood and bodies everywhere. And it's super, super fast. And the thing is, you're expected to lose. Like, you can kind of look around. You can hold the shift button and shift. Okay, so the first time I ever played this game, I played it on the Xbox at Bridger's house. Bridger, friend of the podcast, also been on it. I did not, one, know that there was a peek button so that you could shift the camera and look at other enemies. Two, I did not know that there was a lock-on function. How I advanced through the game at all without that, I do not know. All right, I must have been in the zone that night. But you can lock on to enemies so that basically the way the control scheme works is your character, you're, of course, looking down on your character from the top. It would be right stick on a controller, but on the PC, which I was playing, it's WASD keys. That moves your character up, down, left, right. When to change the way that you're facing, you have to use the mouse, right? So you can move, but you don't change the way that you look. But you swing the way that you look. Basically, if you lock onto an enemy, your character looks at them no matter how you move, which makes it much simpler to attack them, but then you're not prepared to adjust and attack anybody else. So when I started playing this 2 nights ago, I figured that ability out, and basically the thing that struck me, aside from the brutality of the violence, which is so satisfying, and I have no moral qualms about this shit because it looks ridiculous. It just looks like red squares.
It looks like a Pokemon
soundtrack
game.
Is unbelievable. I mean, it's in that like Outrun 80s motif, like the vibrant colors, and
Lots of neon.
Oh yeah,
purples,
But the music
teals.
is like a synthesizer's exposition. It is just so much fun to listen.
We heard
to.
a little bit of it, and it reminded me of the Blade Runner soundtrack.
Yeah.
like,
It was
like
funny.
synth heavy, but like very atmospheric. There was also some lo-fi hip hop in there. And one of the things I really liked about the look of this game, and I feel like it would be perfect if it wasn't so violent and so such a niche kind of a game, is it looks like the perfect kind of game that should be on the Switch. Like they're really pushing that right now. There's a great game out called Golf Story, which is a game that looks a lot like this, and it's an RPG where you play golf and you progress through a story, and it is really heartbreaking and awesome.
I might need to play that since I have a Switch.
But it's this style of a game. Maybe not the point and click and run around and murder shit, because instead you just play golf. But it's that kind of game, and this looks like something that would feel wonderful to play on a Switch. Like, it would be so much fun to take this somewhere with you. Is this available on consoles at all?
Yeah, actually, I first played it on consoles, and it is available. But I bought it recently on a sale, I think for $4 on Steam.
Wow.
Yeah, and it's the real nice crossroad. It's not a $60 game. You're not getting 16 hours out of it unless you really stink, right?
I mean, me.
But this, I would, if straight up playing this game, I would pay $20 and I wouldn't feel bad about it at all. But it's pretty old, so you can get it for like $7. And there's a sequel out that costs you like $10.
Oh my god.
Hotline Miami 2.
Oh, I love they keep the
But
same
yeah, it's
name.
I mean, you have the typical behavior from your your CPU guards where they have patrol routes, and then you have to figure out how to sneak up on them. They have vision cones, but their vision cones are sort of enhanced. And what I mean by vision cones is, if you go back to the earliest stealth games, earliest popular ones anyway, you think Metal Gear Solid, or even Splinter Cell.
Mm-hmm.
Basically, computer characters have a cone emanating from their eyes, where if you're within that cone, they notice you, but if you're outside of it, they don't.
A determined and obvious to the player field of vision.
Right. So this game sort of operates on that.
But there's no visible lines to tell you exactly where their vision starts and ends.
But the nice thing
you see
about
that?
it is...
Oh, I see that they're
right
slightly
around them.
illuminated.
Well, no, that's just an illumination space.
Oh,
so you know.
it
But
is?
the nice thing about it is there is a random element to it, in that, like, if, as we're seeing here in the gameplay, if you swing and miss, they hear you swing, and they turn around, and then they bury you, right?
Okay, right.
They just hit you down. So if you come through a door and a guy's right behind it, he gets knocked on his back, then you have to get on the ground, and you smash his head into the ground. And end
Yeah, I
him.
saw them. They were like, he knocked him down, and like I thought that they were dead, and I thought it was over with, and the fucker got up and he beat the shit out of it. I'm
It's
like,
just
it's
I
Yeah.
love
Brutal.
So fast and smooth and brutal.
I love
Yeah.
the back.
Well, and that's the thing. You
and
can-
it's like 18 bits.
You can knock a guy down, like we see laying, and if you forget about him, and he's alive, he gets back up, he picks up a gun, he shoots you in the back of your head, and this is
Look at that.
one.
Do you guys
once
notice-
you are hit once, you are dead. And you
Oh,
have to
yeah.
restart
Game
the
over.
level.
Now,
But
do you-
somehow the bad guys can get hit like 10 times.
No.
Well, maybe 2 to 3.
No. These guys die in one hit.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you guys notice that the background? So the map is essentially viewable at all times of gameplay. The entire map that you're on, you could just
The other
scroll
rooms.
over the rest of the area.
Well,
right?
if you hold the shift button, it lets you look.
so you can't scroll over the entire area. You can't see
Not the entire
map.
thing. It's
Okay.
limited, but
But now the air. What I'm interested right now is, do you guys see the colors changing on the outside area of the map? I think that's a great little touch.
Yeah.
I love that the your points total in the upper right hand part of the screen is like slightly varying, like that
So
old
the-
Windows 95 screensaver.
the color that the background,
Yeah.
the background. So there is the building map that we see, the play area, and beyond it, they didn't like put grass or anything. They just
No.
put different colors. Like you can navigate it, but it looks like you're
It's wonderfully
in the
dreamlike.
Yeah, it looks like you're
It
operating.
is
in a
very
dream.
surreal.
But it doesn't take away from anything, and they change color based on what's happening in the game.
And what's cool is the point system you were talking about. It serves no other purpose other than to unlock other weapons. And the weapons are nice, and you unlock other masks. And the thing is, you could beat the game without unlocking anything, but they just allow you to change the way that you play. So later on in the game, there are dogs, and these dogs you can't just punch them; they're too fast. Unless you wear the tiger mask, in which your punches are lethal,
Lightning.
and they behave like steel pipes. Well, later on in the game, you get the Lassie mask, and dogs just don't attack you at all.
Wow.
It is so convenient. I just stormed a nightclub and killed all the mobsters in there, and left the dogs for last. And it's interesting because I think the game assesses the number of non-player characters, the number of NPCs that exist, and gives them behavior based on certain input that you apply. So, like, if you shoot off a gun and there's 5 characters left, 3 of them will run at you. But if you have 3 characters left and you shoot off a gun, then all 3 of them run at you, right? So what I'll do is I'll leave the dogs who won't attack me because of my mask and shoot off my gun, and hopefully 2 of the 3 that attack me are those dogs that aren't actually going to hurt me.
Right.
So that's how I navigated through this hall, and that's what I'm saying. There's a nice level of randomness to this. Like, you're gonna run into situations with Hotline Miami where you're like, how the fuck did that guard even notice me? And it's, you know what? To a point, it's probably horseshit. I've hit guys with pipes who hit me at the same time and we're both dead after I've nearly beaten a stage. But they break up full levels into good levels of stages, or a good amount of work on each stage, and all you have to do is hit the reload button, the restart button, and there is, what is it, a 2-second reload?
Barely.
There's not a delay, so you can fuck up a ton of times in a row and you're never waiting. You just try again.
I think that's the most frustrating part about hard games for me, that like you die so much is having to fucking wait for it to do the load screen
Did you
again.
guys play Cuphead?
I've not touched
Not yet.
Cuphead yet.
That's next on my list.
I don't want to give anything away. That game is similar in that it is an old school feeling game. It's essentially a side-scrolling shoot 'em up that's fun because of its art style, but there's so much more to it. But the problem is that because its art style is so beautiful, it takes a while to load.
Up.
And,
Whereas,
and that sucks when you've lost to the same boss 30 fucking times. Like, it's okay in this because and the video of the person who we're watching playing through it, Bill's the only one here with any hands-on experience with this game, but right now looking at it, I want to go home and get it.
It'll cost you like $6.
And
Hotline
I have
Miami,
no qualm with that.
Hotline Miami, really, when it came out of nowhere.
Is this a Russian game?
I don't think so.
It's definitely not
I
American.
love this,
But
at the
yeah.
end.
At the very end, they total up your
level
points.
menu.
They give you bonuses, and they give you a grade, which is like a C. The guy we're watching got a C+.
It reminds me of the menus in the arcade games from
That's what I was thinking.
the ones with the racer, the one that was like at every Red Robin.
But it's actually got a pretty
Cruising
cool,
USA.
Cruisin' USA, you fucker.
It's actually got a pretty neat little storyline. I cannot hammer hard enough how sweet the music is.
The music
and
is really
there's
cool.
in between level encounters where where you're not fighting, you're just doing exposition. And at first, I was like, "Oh, this is just slowing me down." You know what I mean? I just want to murder dudes in this game. But as it goes on, I sort of fell into the flow of the game, and I let it guide me. And it ends up being a whole experience. Not to mention, you're driving a fucking whatever that
DeLorean.
guy was, DeLorean.
Looks like a
You're driving
DeLorean.
DeLorean.
It's like the DeLorean crossed with Deckard's car from Blade Runner.
But the game,
Yeah.
right.
because I can't keep bringing up Blade Runner enough.
It is one of my favorites in this. It's a new era, I think. I mean, Demon Souls was out for a while, but when Dark Souls really took off, I think it ushered in a new era of games with consequences. We watched the degradation of consequences in games when we went from a system like Counter-Strike, which has health and then health packs to replenish, to games like Call of Duty where you get hit, or Gears of War, you get hit and then you hide behind cover and then your health fully recovers.
Or even worse, you die and then you respawn within a second.
Well, yeah.
Not that that's wrong, but I'm saying
But
that's the
I'm
Call of Duty
talking about
method.
like specific in-game health management.
Okay.
You know, it used to be that you would have to replenish your health with health packs, and then they're like, they literally decided that this was too frustrating for players. So now if you take damage and then you hide behind a bunker or something, your health will regenerate and you're at full health with you taking no other action other than not being hit. Demon Souls, and then popularized by Dark Souls, flipped the script and made all of your actions have consequences, because if you get hit one time, you will then be dead.
And there are only a few games I can even think of off the top of my head that haven't fallen down that path that you're talking about of the cheap way of regenerating health in a game. The Zelda franchise comes to mind. I don't think at any point in any Zelda you can just regain hearts from standing still. Stamina, yes, but not even in the new one. I don't like, especially in the new one, which is heavily influenced by Dark Souls. I think I really feel those games' influence on the new Zelda. But the new Doom is a game where, again, they were like, I don't think your health I think your health does regenerate after a sustained amount of time, a long.
You regenerate a little bit of it,
Yeah, but the best
my
way to
mic?
get it back is to
You
actively kill shit.
yeah, it's health packs, dude.
And it's not even health pack. You get better health packs and better shit the more shit you kill.
But this
and the
game-
faster you kill it.
This game takes it to the next level in that when you are hit, you are then dead as the player
Yeah.
character.
Not
If you hit
even-
if you hit an enemy, I mean, you can knock them down sometimes. Usually, you just kill them. There are a couple enemies that take 2 hits, and of course, there are boss fights that take like 3 or 4. But
Yeah.
it is such a good mechanic because it keeps you honest. You know what I mean? You can bitch as much as you want. This game's unfair, but you just hit R and you reload super quick. Like you're not losing that much progress. So I think that I'm not saying that this game does it, but that would be a really great way to hide shitty, unfair gameplay. You're just like, we'll just reload. You only lost 3 minutes of progress. But this game includes a number of different weapons: the shotgun, the machete.
The shotgun looks
pistol.
nuts.
I was
Yeah,
just
well, and the thing is, they all have.
It's just brutal.
You know what else is really
They all
cool?
have individual behavior that really differentiates each other from each other, and it's not it's not just paying lip service to it. Like there's a double barrel shotgun that shoots 2 shots really quickly, but then it's empty. There's a pump action that shoots every once in a while. Like the shotgun, if you shoot it, doors are huge in this game because if you open a door into an enemy, it knocks them on the ground.
Yeah.
You can then shoot the other guy and you stomp the guy on the ground to death or whatever. If you pick up like an M16, the noise can pull enemies from another room, but it doesn't shoot through a door. If you shoot a shotgun, it blows the door open, and then you can shoot through the enemy on the other side. But if you have a pump action, there's enough time that you blowing the door open, an enemy will shoot you. With the double barrel, it shoots boom, boom, so you blow the door open, then you immediately shoot the guy on the other side. But the thing is, your character doesn't abandon a weapon when it's empty.
No.
You have the option to throw it. Now, if you whip it at a guy, it knocks him down on the ground, then you can go over and finish him. Right? But if you try to shoot it, he just goes click, 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 and then you get murdered, and you have to start the level over.
Wow.
It is,
That was cool.
it is tight gameplay.
I was we just literally watched a video of someone doing exactly what you were talking about, utilizing the throwing mechanic. One other thing I just saw from like a pulpy love of games like this of gore, the viscera. When you hit someone, there is like a slightly more pink splatter than the dark red blood comes out, and it's just they took it to a whole nother level, and it's brilliant. I really
I'm
love.
assuming that's a boss.
Yeah, I think we just saw a boss fight.
Yeah, if he takes more than one...
And he just crushed his eyes like the mountain.
Holy shit!
Yeah, there's some
And it's
pretty-
in like, what is this,
heck is
32
What the
bit?
fuck is
What is
this?
going on here?
You're rescuing
There's
A prostitute.
like
The
a naked
whore.
girl laying down on a bed.
She's got a bunch of toys and
So
handcuffs
I'm going to
next
ask
to
you
her.
guys on a give me a percentage. Give me a number 1 through 10. How likely are you to pick this game up for $5?
For $5,
$5,
I'm
10.
I'm gonna go get it right now.
It seems like an easy win.
Yeah.
If you play
Yeah.
it for,
It is for me. It was a new experience watching it. I
Yeah.
watched it on Two Best Friends when they played it, and I said, I need this fucking game. Put it on my watch list. Came up for like $5. Bought it, and the game. Even when I beat the level, it still shits on me for not having enough style.
That's
I love
this.
it, and I recommend it. So, you guys have anything else you want to touch on before we wrap the episode up?
No, I'm sold on this. I'm sold on this game, bro.
I didn't. This seems like a much more invested in, like somebody really cared compared to Dino D-Day, what we talked about earlier, which just seemed like somebody smoked a little too much weed one night. Some Silicon Valley
Dino D-Day
motherfucker.
was really well done, and the part of its value is the fact that it's multiplayer, so you can play it forever as long as there's a
Okay,
community.
yeah.
But this game as a standalone single player,
Yeah.
I mean,
Like I said, I really look. I think this game would be perfect on the Switch.
and it's got a sequel out already.
Already.
All right.
See, I just don't know if I would want to play it. Like, I just feel like it's the kind of game that would be great to take with you.
You know
You know what
it was
I mean?
funny. I played it the other night, and I couldn't beat the 4th chapter. It's split into like 21 chapters. So I quit the game for an hour and a half, and I came back, and then I finally beat the level. It's one of those like, you gotta take it back.
That's what I mean. Like, if you took it upstairs to the bathroom to take
Yeah.
a shit
Yeah.
and got it up there with you on your squatty potty, not ready. like to
Okay.
mention my personal sponsor, Squatty Potty. It basically just falls out.
Well, I just want to say, everybody who's still listening now, thank you for sticking through one of our more political, but I think relevant episodes. And as always, do not forget, cock 'em, lock 'em, and rock 'em, baby.
Bang, bang, motherfucker.
2 guns, no ammo. Out.
Peace.
Thanks for having me.
I got 5.
Bye.
Enough!